please stand, and we'll have Chaplain Freed lead us in the invocation, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Chaplain Freed.
Thank you. Let us pray. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. We are thankful, O God, that you concern yourself with what goes on in the world of humanity in general, in specific locations, and here today with us right now. I pray that you will help us to conduct the business and art and joy of healthcare throughout our county today and every day. Help us, from the board to housekeeping, to be the healthcare professionals that you have called us to all be as we look to you to provide for us in some of the most complex, difficult, and tender ways. Give us civility and wisdom beyond our own to overcome any obstacles in your way. Most of all, dear Lord, we ask for your particular care for our patients during their stay with us. As you know, Lord, we continue to want the very best for all of our patients at all times. As we move forward with the day, please give us the clarity of a relaxed and fruitful heart and mind. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You'll face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can be seated. Again, I'd like to welcome all the citizens who've come out to our meeting. It's become a regular occurrence, and so we're glad that you are here. I'd like to just introduce the folks at the board table so that you know your elected representatives. Sharon Peters, who you'll just raise your hand and wave. Sharon Peters. Brad Baker represents the Northern District. Rick Reiner is at large. I'm Tram Hudson, I'm at large and chairman of the board. Mr. Carter is from the Southern District. Patricia Mariah is from the Southern District. And Vic Rohe is from the Northern District. And Bridget Fiorucci is from the Central District. Those are the elected members of the board who are here. And we're also joined at the table Dr. Jim Fiorica, who is the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jonathan Hopper, who is the Chief of Staff, David Barrier, who's the CEO, Carol Ann Kalish, who's our Chief Legal Officer, and Karen Marshall is the Secretary to the board. So, again, we're glad you're here. We will begin. First order of business is the approval of the orders of the day. Now we entertain the motion to approve the orders of the day. Is there any discussion? I would like to make some change. If we could, our recipient for the Excel Award is not able to be with us today, and I would ask that we postpone that until next month with y'all's concurrence. Any other discussion or changes? Call for a vote. All those in favor say yes. Yes. And motion pass. I don't pass my agenda. Thank you. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes meeting of February 21st. The second by Mr. Carter. Any comments, corrections, or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, are you prepared to vote? All those in favor say yes. That's good. Motion passed. Second. Thank you, Ms. Marshall, for reminding me of that. And underneath here, I failed to read a public notice. Any citizen desiring to address the hospital board should turn in a speaker card to the board secretary. Comments will be heard in the public comment section of the agenda. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. The chair may find it necessary to limit the time for comments in the interest of time. Vendors, suppliers, or other persons seeking hospital contracts awarded on a competitive basis are reminded that their ability to address the board may be restricted by the terms of the invitation to bid, request for proposal, or other purchasing criteria. Lastly, the board has established a claims adjustment review panel comprised of representatives of the board, medical staff, administration, and legal counsel to review and negotiate the settlement of claims. Accordingly, the board will not entertain comments or discuss or negotiate claims at this meeting. So, we'll have more talk about the public comments in that section. The next item is the board reports. I don't believe there are any board reports this morning. And as I announced earlier, the Excel award winner, Susan Vincent, was not able to be here to present her award to her at your time. And I'd like to call on our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jim, to begin the medical staff.
I have nothing to report to you.
Dr. Hoffberger.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask for a motion approving Sarasota Memorial Hospital, Sarasota, elimination of privileges as amended for otolaryngology as recommended by the SMA Sarasota Medical Examiner.
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say yes.
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 Motion passed. Thank you. And Dr. Jefferson, our Chief of Staff of the Venice Hospital, you have a report or request?
I do not have a report this month, Chairman.
He has no reports. We'll go to item number 7, the Secretary's report. Bridget Fiorici.
Monday, April 17th, 2023, 9 to 10:30, Michigan Planning Committee, 10:30 to noon, Quality Committee, noon to 12:30, closed session, Hospital Board meeting, 12:30 to 2, board lunch, issue and financial review, 2 to 4 is the board meeting.
Any questions of Bridget? Thank you, Bridget. The treasurer report, Mr. Clark. Would you repeat that so the audience can hear how much we're charging?
I move approval of the bad debts and charity care for the month ended February 28th, 2023, in the amount of $19,845,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion passed. Ask for our financial filings under item number 9, our CFO Jeff Limbaugh.
Okay, good afternoon. These are the financial highlights through February, for February and through February of 2023. So 5 months of our fiscal year at this point. Our total revenue for the month of February for the system was an actual of $137,940,000 versus the budget of $127,927,000. Bar chart to the right is the fiscal year to date numbers for total revenue, $700,446,000 versus a budget of $615,547,000. The next slide is total expenses again for the entire district. For February, the bar chart on the left, we had $132,297,000 of total expenses versus a budget of $117,444,000. To the right is our fiscal year to date numbers, $659,330,000 $3,000 of total expenses year-to-date actual versus a budget of $586,874,000. Next slide is our resulting operating income. For the month of February, our actual operating income was $5.643 million, which is an operating margin of 4.1% versus a budget operating margin of $10,483,000, which is a budgeted operating margin percent of 8.2%. For the year to date, the bar to the right, the $41,143,000 of actual operating margin, which is 5.9%, versus a budget of $28,673,000, which is an operating margin budget of 4.7%. Moving into statistics for the hospitals, our average daily occupancy, which is the bar chart to the left, is 884. Year to date versus a budget of 735 in occupancy. That is a length of stay for Sarasota, year to date of 4.77. And for Venice Hospital, the length of stay year to date is 3.95. Our admissions and observation cases year to date through February, our actual is 30,485 versus a budget of 25,960. More statistics for the hospitals. Our surgery cases year to date, 12,980 versus a budget of 11,640. Our births year to date, 1,748 versus a budget of 1,822. Next slide, outpatient registrations for the hospitals, 242,913 through February versus a budget of 232,428. Our emergency care registrations, year to date, 74,287 versus a budget of 60,909. And then finally, case mix index, these are year to date numbers also for the hospitals. Our case mix index, all patients for Sarasota, which is the last set of bar charts on the right, the first one in blue, we had a case mix index of 1.82. Our Medicare case mix index for the Sarasota campus is 1.91. For Venice year to date, our all patient case mix index is 1.58 versus our Medicare case mix index of 1.65. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Jeff?
None. Thank you, Jeff. We'll now go to item number 10, the committee reports. And I call on Brad Baker, Chair of the Committee, to give the report.
The minutes of the January 17th Finance Committee meeting were approved. Sharon Roush, President of SMH Venice, and Stephen McGilliard, Chief Financial Officer at SMH Venice, presented the Bed Tower 3 second floor build-out project. Bed Tower 3, which includes 68 private inpatient rooms, is currently under construction on the SMH Venice hospital campus. The project will have 34 inpatient medical surgical beds for a total of 102 beds in the new tower. The additional capacity will help mitigate the constraints of SMH Venice that they are experiencing due to an increased population, FPG growth, service line expansions, and the unexpected closure of Shore Point Health in Venice. Bed Tower 3 is expected to open in April 2024, and the second floor build-out will follow in the fall 2024. At this time, I move approval of the build-out of the second floor of Bed Tower 3 at SMH Venice to include 34 additional beds and an amount not to exceed $34,812,000 as recommended by the Finance Committee.
And the second is any discussion? In fact, I'd just like to comment for the benefit of the citizens that are here, the board starts meeting in committees early in the morning. We started at 9 o'clock with our finance committee, and there's a lot of discussion as it take lightly spending $34 million of your money without any discussion, and that occurs in the committees. And the committees, I would say, are open to the public if you want to attend. So, is there any further discussion on the motion before?
I just want to make a comment that, as we heard in our presentation today from President Sharon Roush of the Venice campus, that the Venice Hospital was full and at capacity the first month that it opened. Given the closure of Shore Point, which was formerly known as Venice Regional Hospital, which was completely unforeseen, nor were we given much notice. We have now absorbed further that census. So in addition to the population growth, the need for other people to receive care, that it was a presentation that told itself, and really this community is desperate for more hospital beds in South County. So I am very proud to support this.
Any other discussion before we vote? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 Motion passed. Thank you, Brad.
Carolyn Kalish, Chief Legal Officer, presented on the sale of support services building residential development units, which includes selling 14 of the units for an acquisition price of $1.4 million. And so I move approval of the sale of 14 of the 163 residential development rights associated with the support services building for $1.4 million, and for granting the easement as described and authorize administration to execute such documents as are necessary to finalize the sale as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Is there a second? And a second, Mr. Carter.
I was just going to add that this is the building that used to be the Sarasota Herald Tribune building downtown, which we now use for administrative purposes. In that building, when we purchased it, there was also attached the right to build residential units. That's not our intent with the property, and so we are able to sell those development rights to the adjacent property owners, and that's what this transaction is about.
Thank you, Brad. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Bobby Pettit, Controller, presented on the recurring wire transfers and automatic clearinghouse transactions, ACH, used to conduct business at SMH, CS, as well as control mechanisms in place to ensure that only authorized payments occur. At this time, I move approval of the updated list of recurring wire transfers and ACH transactions and other payments, and the list of authorized initiators and approvers to authorize staff to initiate and authorize them as needed, as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Is there a second? Mr. Roby, offered a second. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, prepare to vote. All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Jeff Bacher, Chief Financial Officer, gave a presentation on the sources of operating revenues for Sarasota Memorial by type of service, geography, and payers. I might also add, Britt had a good discussion, or started a good discussion about, with the banking, all the banking crisis issues going on, she wanted to basically understand and confirm that what our exposure was in bank accounts over 250,000, and if we had any exposure, the board was convinced that we were in really good shape there. As our funds are in large banks, also. And trying to be a banker, I'm not going to just shut it.
I was just saying, as a former banker, of course, but once a banker, always a banker, where public entities make deposits in commercial banks, those commercial banks have to put up collateral to support those deposits. So I feel very comfortable with Jeff Lindbacher's review of our banking situation, that we're well secured with our bank.
I'll always be a baker, not a banker.
Always a baker, definitely take them over your place for lunch. I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Baker. Mrs. Peters, if you'll render the Human Resources Committee report.
Yes, I will, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Human Resources Committee met this morning. First, we heard an environmental scan highlighting the human resources, challenges, and opportunities, including the need for 1,163 new staff for our growing system and the competitive labor market outlook. We discussed the incredible growth that has already taken place, going from 4,920 to 9,231 employees in the past 8 years, matching our volume increases and the projected need to go to almost 10,600 plus employees over the next 3 years. After discussing our complex workforce dynamics, we discussed our staffing needs as a system. The committee then discussed top priorities for HR industry-wide and our strategies to support them. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Sharon? Thank you for your report. We'll go to the next item, number 11, the President's report. David, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I am going to start this morning or this afternoon, as I always do at our organizational report card. We do have 5 areas of concentration that we look at, and I'll start with the first one of being in service. We have a goal of having our likelihood of recommending in our service areas be at or greater than a 75th percentile. Our goal is to have 8 out of 10 of those hit that. We actually have hit 10 out of 10 for this year to date, and I'll show you the details on that in a minute. And the second area of concentration is that of people. We had a great report this morning from, as you heard Ms. Peters report on from our Vice President of HR, Lori Bennett. But one of the functions of that is looking at our new hire retention, and we have a percent of regular and full-time employees that have been hired in FY 2023 that are still employed at the end of the fiscal year. We have a goal of having that be at 83% or higher. I'm happy to report that we are trending just under 91%. And the third area of concentration is that of quality. And we take a look at our infection prevention. And to do that, we look at our combined overall standardized infection rate. We have a goal of being at less than 0.8, and I'm happy to report I'm on this page 1 still. Okay. Oh, all right. Thank you, Carolyn. Do you have it now? Okay. We're at 0.67, which is significantly lower than our goal, which is a great thing. Just to remind the public and the board that 1.0 is expected, or the national average, so we already set our goal being significantly less than that. The fourth item of concentration is in finance. We have that, and as you heard our CFO Jeff Limbacher give earlier, our operating margin is our goal, and we have a goal of being at 5%, which is our budget. We are tracking higher now at this point at 5.5%. And then finally, in growth, we have 2 goals that we look at. One is our inpatient admissions and observation outpatients, being at 61,950 for the year. We are trending higher than that at 72,739. And then the other being outpatient registrations. We have a goal of having 1.3 million outpatient registrations, and we are trending higher than that as well, 1.372. Next up, I'm going to look at the detailed part of our patient experience report card. Just to orient you, to the left-hand side, we have the likelihood of recommending, which lists the 10 different departments that we survey. The middle number is our score, the actual score that we have. The next one over is the national median score. And then finally, the 75th percentile score to the far right, which is what we compare to in our, as I described a minute ago. Happy to report that all 10 of our sites are meeting or greater than a 75th percentile. So congratulations to the team. Thank you, Mrs. Peters. And everyone else. Next is SMH was named among the world's best hospitals this last month. So we were recently recognized among the world's best hospitals by the Newsweek magazine. SMH has made the prestigious list 5 times in a row since the global rankings began in 2018. It's the only hospital in Southwest Florida to make the list, which is based on patient care quality metrics, as well as surveys of patients, physicians, and of course, hospital staff. The global rankings were released in collaboration with the market research company Statistic. That company. Thank you. Next, we were named, SMH was named a top hospital for nurses in Florida. SMH Sarasota was ranked in the top 10 hospitals for nurses in the state of Florida and the highest in the region, according to the latest ranking from Nurse Journal, a national resource in education and career development for nurses and aspiring healthcare professionals. SMH ranked second on the list of Florida hospitals due to its high score in the Nurse Journal study, which evaluated key areas including nurse work environment, career opportunities, nurse benefits, nurse communication, patient experience, and of course, safety measures. So thank you all for that. SMH participates in pivotal studies for patients with failing heart valves. Sarasota Memorial is participating in 3 global clinical trials to evaluate minimally invasive treatment options for patients with cardiac valve disorders, led by our interventional cardiologist, Dr. Ricardo Yura, and coordinated by the Sarasota Memorial Research Institute. The key objective of the trials is to evaluate the safety and efficacy of transcatheter valve replacement with the Edwards Life Sciences devices in the mitral, aortic, and tricuspid spaces, otherwise known as the TAP program. This research offers an opportunity to further examine novel treatment options, especially for patients who are not eligible for surgical treatments. Not on the slide, but I will say if you go to our podcast, Dr. Yura recently did a podcast explaining all this, and you can find that anywhere you get your podcast from, so it was very informative. Next up is our HealthCast focuses on child development and family resources. First 1,000 Days Suncoast helps families during pregnancy and their child's first 1,000 days of life, when 80% of a child's brain development occurs. Chelsea Arnold discusses the importance of collaboration with community partners for the best outcomes for family. So please visit our website and look for the podcast once again. I think you'll find it very informative, and I think Chelsea does a great job explaining that. Next up, for those with binoculars, you can actually read that screen. We do have our free lecture series. So we have a number of physicians that come in into this auditorium and give free lecture series. We would invite you to go to our website and sign up for these free series and look for this and others on our website. Next up, we have our Milk Depot continues to provide for our tiniest patients. Many thanks to the mothers in our community for helping the most fragile babies in Florida hospitals. In 2022, our Sarasota and Venice Hospital Milk Depots collected almost 18,000 ounces of milk, which was sent to the Mothers Milk Bank of Florida for distribution. When mothers are not able to produce their own milk, the milk generously donated by screened donors is the next best thing for babies in our NICU. Summer Employment Program for 2023. Sarasota Memorial was pleased to announce the return of Summer Employment Program at a variety of our locations throughout the system for students ages 16 through 24. The program will run from June 7th to August 4th. Participants have the opportunity to work in various healthcare areas, including but not limited to nursing, supply chain, information systems, human resources, and rehab services. The purpose of the program is to encourage an interest in the healthcare careers of these young people. Mr. Chair, that is my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Questions for David? Any other board members? All right. Thank you, David. Moving on to item number 12, consent agenda. We do not have anything on the consent agenda for this meeting. And we'll move to number 13, which is public comments. Let me make a few comments if I can. We have added some enhancements to the public comment item on our agenda. I think you'll see we have added a new clock where the speaker can see the 3 minutes that are being allowed for the time. I will continue to give a 1 minute warning when there's 1 minute remaining. We've also invested in a new podium, which is, I think, very easy for people to get to here. We have also added stanchions to separate the board table area from the audience, so that you'll please respect the board's privacy here and remain on the side. You're welcome to visit with board members after the meeting when they leave, but during the meeting, we ask that members of the public stay in the audience section. So if I may, I'd like to start with some guidelines that we have adopted. We would like speakers to identify themselves by stating their full name and whether or not they are a resident of Sarasota County before beginning their comments. The clock will start after they have identified themselves. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes to allow for maximum participation, and speakers should mind the timer that will be visible in the auditorium. The chair may announce when the speaker has 1 minute remaining. Please be respectful of other speakers by adhering to the time limit. Other guidelines for civility and decorum, we're asking only those individuals who have submitted speaker cards and have been recognized by the chair to address the board. Comments during the public comment section of the agenda shall be related to hospital issues only. Personal attacks, abusive language, or profanity of any kind will not be tolerated. No person attending the board meeting is to harass, annoy, or otherwise disturb any other person in the room. Clapping, whistling, heckling, gesturing, loud conversations, or other disruptive behavior is prohibited. We ask that you turn your electronic devices either off or in the silent position. And if you are a speaker and you have signed up and you leave the room, and if your name is called, you don't come forward, your name will go to the bottom of the list. We have over 50 speakers today. I have received the yellow comment cards there. Here's some more. And put these at the bottom. But I will go straight through these. I have not picked out the speakers in any way. So, any member of the public whose behavior is disruptive or violates these guidelines is subject to removal from the board meeting or such other action. So, I hope we have a good understanding. Let's begin the public comment section. I'd like to call on first Dr. Sherry Weinstein. Please come forward. Followed by, and again, I apologize if I messed the names up, Sherry Darasang, and Laura Hart. Dr. Weinstein, welcome. The Dr.
Weinstein.
Weinstein. I
am Dr. Sherry Weinstein, and I'm happy to be here again. Thank you for letting me address the board. I'm a resident of Sarasota, Florida. I have been a board member. I've been a staff member of Sarasota Memorial Hospital for over 22 years. Have sat on the Quality Improvement Committee for this hospital for the good part of that, and was formerly the co-chair of the QI board. So my time should start now, because you made me announce myself. Thank you. So
start the time for her.
Thank you. So I've been reviewing the COVID deaths on the QI board. I was told that it wasn't the time or the place to discuss COVID treatments. And now we're being told that it's not really the time or the place to discuss COVID treatments and the vaccines during the board meetings. well. Our governor and Surgeon General know that the shots that we're giving are ineffective and dangerous, and that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine protocols are effective. So that makes them conspiracy theorists. So I'm in good company. I reviewed the SMH COVID report at length and found many issues and one major discrepancy regarding the COVID mortality data. I brought this up at the QI meeting, and I am hoping to hear some resolution about that. In addition, per the report, SMH readmission rate being higher than the national average indicates to me that people were being sent home untreated or undertreated for COVID. Many of them went home, some died at home, some went to other hospitals. We only treated less than 50% of the people that were tested positive for COVID at the hospital. The hospital admissions and COVID death information shows that the vaccine rollout, after the vaccine rollout, deaths and admissions at SMH increased. So how can these vaccines be effective? This correlates with the Johns Hopkins data that shows the same thing in many nations that were vaccinating. The few trials that were selected by the board to say that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were ineffective were designed to fail. And I've sent you emails with what that means, and I'm happy to discuss at length. The email sent to the staff in August of 21 definitely said that we were not, in capital NOT letters, to use those medications to treat COVID, but instead we were allowed to use other medications that were not FDA approved, emergency use authorized, and generated a lot of revenue for the hospital. How many times did the COVID team meet during the pandemic, and how many times were these guidelines updated as the ivermectin randomized meta-analysis was going on? Data presented at the EU Parliament shows that 1 in 800 patients have a serious adverse reaction to the Moderna and Pfizer shots. Therefore, it is a wash in the age 70 and above to get the vaccine. Every other age group, it is more detrimental to get the vaccine. If the hospital wants to limit its liability exposure, we need to focus on lawsuits occurring all over the country in hospitals and other nations where hospitals, doctors, and others are pushing a flawed narrative. We need to re-examine the preponderance of evidence that early treatment works for COVID and that already FDA-approved drugs are safer and more effective than the EUA authorized drugs that generate millions for the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Nancy Sherry of Ringside, followed by Laura Hartman, followed by James W. Case. Sherry, if you could state your name for the record and also whether you're a resident here if you can.
My name is Cherie Dorisami. I'm a resident a long time in Sarasota County.
Thank you. So,
My father died at Sarasota Memorial Hospital Venice campus on just January 22nd this year. We noticed during our time there that there didn't seem to really be a real plan there at the hospital for his beating this. I honestly didn't think that I was going to have a chance to speak here, so I didn't keep my words down to 3 minutes and my speech down to 3 minutes. I'm a little.
Keep going.
Okay. We felt like his lungs were damaged. We were told by our physicians that his lungs were damaged from COVID and that they just needed a little bit of time. A family friend and physician observed that COVID inflammation in my father's lungs were not being addressed with adequate doses of steroids from the beginning, and that no testing was being done to check inflammation and to check inflammation levels to gauge whether or not the dosage were even enough to get a handle on the inflammation. Our physician friend could see the lack of testing was allowing the cytokine storm to silently rage while my father looked clinically good. He predicted that by the time it was evident to the doctors that looking at my dad, it would be too late for the inflammation to be reined in. when I asked a physician at the hospital if there's any way to test for the inflammation, we were told that there is no way to test for the inflammation. And we understood then that the protocol at the hospital did not allow for aggressive treatment of the cytokine storm and did not allow for testing to measure whether or not the inflammation of the lungs was responding to the low dosage of steroids or if higher levels of steroids were needed. This seemed the crux of the issue. By not allowing for testing, inflammation of the lungs was allowed to silently build while assuming steroid dosages were adequate. By not allowing us to test the inflammation levels along the way, steroid doses were never allowed to be adjusted. As the inflammation worsened, the fluid increased in the lungs, which decreased the space for air. It was late in the game. It was apparent that when my father wasn't able to speak for himself, I stepped in as health advocate, and I was made aware that Sherry Weinstein, who was familiar with alternative treatments, was willing to implement alternative protocols, which we had advocated for ourselves piecemeal, but were denied. We thank Chief Medical Officer Dr. James Fioruca for allowing this intervention. Dr. Sherry Weinstein was not on autopilot. She aggressively pulled out all the stops to pull my dad back. By then, the inflammation in his lungs was too long, undertreated, and we lost our father.
I'll give you another minute.
Thank you. We believe that Sherry Weinstein did heroically her best, even at such a late hour, and we thank SMH for cracking the door open to alternative efforts. But what is needed is early alternative treatment and many doctors equipped with the ability and confidence to implement them. What doctors at SMH call the gold standard in COVID treatment is ineffective, and we're losing our population. I'm advocating that fellow Americans residing here ask Sarasota Memorial Hospital to break away from the narrow COVID protocols from on high, which its staff is limited to, and open the door wide to alternative treatment plans and allow physicians here to become versed in the merits and effectiveness of early and aggressive alternative treatments for all who are deemed COVID patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley, and our condolences. Next followed Laura Hartman, followed by James W. Case, followed by Dr. Kiri Barkovich. Laura.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Laura Hartman. Today marks the 20th anniversary of the start
Laura, excuse me, could you tell me if you're a resident of Sarasota County?
My address is 21 Clubhouse Place in Rotunda West. My father receives community care at this hospital through the VA program.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome, sir.
You start the call.
Thank you. Today marks the 20th anniversary of the start of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And as a combat Iraqi war veteran, my oath is intimate to me. My oath says all enemies, both foreign and domestic. In early 2020, I chose to become an ordained minister to allow healthcare workers and other frontline professionals the opportunity to receive either a religious exemption or a fake vaccine card. Because in my eyes, those were the options. I would like Dr. Brian Artis to stand up for a moment. This physician kept my dad out of this hospital. This physician, having the willingness and courage to speak of alternative treatments, kept my father out of this hospital. I was able to give him ivermectin and follow all the FLCC protocol in our home. So he didn't have to come in here, and I didn't have to stand here with the story of losing a loved one with remdesivir. And as a combat veteran, I stand here with accountability to our elected officials, specifically Senator Rand Paul, for inside trade with remdesivir. I did not go overseas, and I did not bury my friends for this heinous crime. So I ask this board to look into why we are looking at different drugs for euthanasia of the heinous criminals when we could be using remdesivir for that. Why are veterans at the VA hospital being euthanized? This is their option to come to this hospital. I fully understand that. But when the option is also stay at home and there's alternative treatments and there's alternative programs and alternative ways out there, why isn't this being talked about? Why isn't this being investigated? So I call not only on this board, but on the Florida Board of Ethics to review remdesivir, the funds behind it, the bad actors involved, and everything else involved with this meeting. I got it.
Mr. James Case, followed by Dr. Markovich, followed by Raj Dorscombe. May I have that wrong?
Good afternoon, my name is Jim Case. I live in University Park, 8156 Collingwood Court. That is, I think, about a long drive outside of Sarasota County, just on the other side of it.
It's probably Manatee County. That's a lot.
So anyway, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I have a personal identification inside this hospital for over a week, and I am so thankful for the care that I received in this facility. That was about 5 years ago for a major cardiac procedure. My wife was recently treated here and had an excellent experience as well. I want to thank you all. I want to thank this entire board. I want to thank all the staff, from the top from the board down through the physicians, the nurses, the medical care staff, and the housekeeping staff. Our experiences were wonderful, not just here at this campus, but at your outside facilities as well. The outpatient care facilities, they've been excellent. This hospital is one of the primary reasons my wife and I decided to relocate to this area 8 years ago. And it has proven itself out more than we could have expected. Care here is wonderful. I don't suppose any place is perfect, but you guys certainly set your bar high and you meet it. I appreciate that, and I think this entire community should be very thankful for what you all do and what all the people here do. Just want to say again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Dr. Kerry Berkovich, followed by Raj Dorscombe, and everyone, and followed by Dr. Stephen DeFond.
Good afternoon, my name is Dr. Carrie Markovich. I'm a board certified periodontal and dental implant surgical specialist. I have a 25-year clinical practice that I've
Dr. Berkovich, are you a resident here?
Yes, I'm Denver. I have relocated 8 months ago to the state of Florida. I've been a practicing dentist and oral surgeon for 25 years with a practice established in San Francisco, California. That's my background. So having said that, I am representing myself as a human being and resident of Sarasota County, Florida, as Carrie. Yes, I have all the doctoral degrees that a lot of people behind me have, but I'm speaking out from the perspective of medicine cannot and should never be bought. My background goes back to my grandmother, who was a physician, a doctor during World War II in the Soviet Union, when she was attending to both prisoners of war and the soldiers on the field. And at that time, there was no discrimination made, who is who. It was about providing care, sometimes a hug, sometimes just an encouraging word for somebody to survive. What I have encountered, and granted, I practiced in California, which was the epicenter of craziness for many different reasons, and definitely not something that I would want to follow coming to Florida and seeing similar thing happen. I've actually kept my patients out of the hospitals because I was able to early on adopt I don't call them alternative treatments, because in medicine, nothing is alternative. They're options. That's what medicine is. It's art of practice. There's science and that's scientism. And where does Ann Gander still? And thank you, Ann. Ann represents Zelenko Foundation. Dr. Zev Zelenko is the reason my patients are alive. Thank you, Ann. So because of people like Dr. Zelenko and other doctors who had the courage of standing up and saying, this is not scientism. We are not cultists. We're practicing physicians and doctors. And by the way, by this time, I will tell you this. Not all doctors are physicians, and not all physicians are doctors. The Latin term of doctor means a teacher. Not a lot of doctors are teaching people nowadays. So my point is that when I see these slogans, keep politics out of medicine, absolutely. If you want to keep politics out of medicine, that means all of the kickbacks, which are common knowledge, is a lot of states, including my former state of California, are receiving multiple lawsuits in basically disclosing the details of how hospitals were paid, putting certain diagnoses over patients' head and getting kickbacks for certain treatments. So my point here right now, if you want to be on the right side of history,
As a doctor, as a teacher, take the stand. It's still not too late. An investigation would be absolutely welcome. I mean, our governor and the Florida Surgeon General, Joe Ladapo, just made a statement that 3 years of this COVID protocol were basically a complete failure. How can this hospital still follow that is beyond me. I encourage you as doctors, wake up.
Thank you, Doctor. I think it sound like a high school teacher that lives restrained tapping the chair. All right, Raj, yours, can I please?
I have difficulty with it myself. It's Dorsami. It's Dorsami.
Okay, and follow that, Steve DePonte, followed by Melissa. So, thank you.
Distinguished board members, Mr. Chairman, CEO Brender, and especially the heroic doctors and nurses, your innovation over this last few years has been exemplary. My remarks today compare the 3-year review report that has been published with my actual experience in 15 days of the ICU, where my father-in-law passed away in January. Many requests for transparency have been made to this board, including Chairman Hudson, from Sarasota residents. In fact, 133,700 of us, representing 71% of our community, have made it clear that we were seeking more transparency. In my experience, that's to no avail. And with due respect, Chairman, you have responded by calling myself, people like me, political labels, and have attempted to make people like me the problem. I'm urging you please to shift from that, and I have 1 or 2 examples of 5 that I'll have time to share with you in a few minutes, where I have seen omissions and misstatements in this report. First, the report says that a wide range of treatment options are available to patients. In fact, the actual truth of the matter is that our first physician in treating my dad insisted on providing remdesivir even after the window for remdesivir had closed. And finally, he said, "You have declined remdesivir. It's the only treatment I have. You have tied my hands. There's nothing I can do," end quote. So this protocol that the report refers to, in my experience, is literally constraining the work and options that the brilliant physicians have available to them. And that is why I am here, sir. The report also says and makes reference to a waiver for patients to request alternative treatments. The truth, contrary to the report, is either that waiver doesn't exist, or for whatever reason it was not provided to my father. Also, the report mentions that you can, as a physician, prescribe alternative treatments. However, I've become aware of emails that Dr. Weinstein made reference to this earlier, that the physicians have been explicitly asked not to do so. So this shadow banning of treatments is banning treatment methods that can be 42% more effective than pharma's 14%. So in closing, sir, in 1850, a man had also come up with a novel idea. He said that unwashed hands can transmit disease from corpses to pregnant, giving birth moms. And he also was ridiculed, and the establishment did not want to review the data, and he was rejected. I'm urging you, imploring you, sir, Chairman Hudson, please make training available to your brilliant doctors and nurses so that they, like Dr. Weinstein, can bring a comprehensive suite of services to people like my father and keep them alive. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Gafanti, followed by Melissa Gafanti, followed by Michelle Post. Dr. Gafanti.
My name is Dr. Stephen Gafanti, and I'm a resident of Sarasota. The COVID-19 response report says that the hospital protocol told the doctors what drugs to use. Yet, the doctors denied they were told what to do. Who do you believe? Either way, you've lost community's trust. The community's interests are basically, why did my loved one die? And will it happen to me if I go to SMH? This is not political. This is life and death. In November, Chairman Tram promised transparency and asked us to give the Quality Committee a second chance. We did, they failed. If we are to believe both the doctors and the report, then the COVID Treatment Task Force Committee, made up of a treatment protocol that the doctors ignored. But that doesn't explain why non-contagious patients are put in COVID isolation, or why heart attacks go untreated. Please consider two questions. First, I told the police your staff stole my clothes. The medical records disagree and say all my clothes were returned. Did the person who picked me up tell your investigator what clothes I was wearing when I left the hospital? If the staff are willing to lie about something as trivial as whether they took my clothes, how reliable is the rest of their charting? Second, during my 12-day stay, there was no record of violent or irrational behavior. There is, however, a 20-minute gap on August 12th of 3:25 to 3:45 a.m. where such behavior is alleged to occur. I was supposed to be trying to punch a nurse and a security guard stepped in the way to take the blow. The extraordinary change in mentation should have been noted in my chart, but there is no nurse's note that corroborates the security guard's story. So either your nurses are incompetent or it just didn't happen. But you don't have to believe me. You have 3 nurses on your board. Ask them if they would document when a patient suddenly goes from alert oriented ×4 to irrational and psychotic behavior. If I was present when my case was discussed with the board, I would have pointed out these inconsistencies. In this one case, you would have gotten true transparency. I believe you are the victims of a cover-up. When he ran, board member Vic Rowe had only one message: renew the community's trust in SMH by bringing transparency to the patient's treatment.
Thank you, Dr. We're followed by Melissa McCarthy, Michelle Posey, and Dr. Carrie Levine.
Hi, my name is Melissa McCondy, and I'm a resident of Sarasota. Okay. I'm a former cardiac nurse married to a medical doctor. I first want to address an insulting article from March 17th on ABC 7 News titled, SMH officials say organized critics have a political agenda. Well, yes, there is an agenda, and it's very simple. Get the government out of healthcare, stop killing people with one-size-fits-all medicine, and hold hospitals accountable when they do commit egregious malpractice. Let's get down to business here. I want to address a couple of findings in your internal cherry-picked COVID report. First, the SMH COVID-19 cover-up report states that SMH has a 24% better mortality rate than 1,300 surrounding hospitals. Did you know that statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics? Why did SMH have a 24% better death rate? COVID testing was done by PCR testing. The PCR testing machine was set settings called thermocycles. SMH is reported by an insider to have run COVID tests at an unusually high number of thermocycles, greater than 60. If true, this leads to the test being positive for COVID, even if the patient really does not have COVID, also called a false positive. You heard that right. According to our inside source, people were testing positive for COVID when they didn't even have COVID. And guess what? Healthy people without COVID don't die of COVID. So if SMH is counting healthy people that really do not have COVID into their statistics of people that do have COVID, of course they are going to have a stellar survival rate when compared with 1,300 hospitals treating truly COVID positive patients. Secondly, on page 19 of your internal COVID-19 cover-up report, the safety of remdesivir is discussed. In Appendix C, on page 74 and 75, it lists the 5 articles that were used to draw the conclusions listed in the report. 3 of these 5 articles are from the New England Journal of Medicine. The first conclusion of remdesivir, listed on page 19, states that according to SMH and these articles, remdesivir is well tolerated over Overall, no safety concerns found. Excuse me, I direct you to remdesivir Article 3, listed in your own Appendix C. This article, June 11th, 2020, showed 60% of patients had adverse effects. 23% had serious adverse effects. Thirdly, the report goes on to state that serious side effects were lower in the remdesivir group versus those in the placebo group. That is a direct statement from the second article listed in your study. Now, this New England Journal of Medicine article dated January 27th was performed on non-hospitalized outpatients. I believe we are talking about inpatients. I think it's disingenuous to put a blanket statement on your report about the serious side effects of remdesivir based on a study that was performed on an outpatient population. The public rejects your COVID cover-up report. You have cherry-picked data to make yourselves look good. You appear to be ignoring the obvious side effects of remdesivir. How can board members vote to approve a report you obviously have not read? Your data is inconsistent with the articles you cite in your appendix.
Thank you.
The public demands a third-party investigation.
Thank you, Melissa.
Dr. Barry Levine and Dr. Joe Shirelli.
Hello, Michelle Posey. Before you start my time, I know you're going to ask if I'm from Sarasota County. Do you only treat patients from Sarasota County?
I'll ask you again, are you a resident?
Okay, because I'm wondering if you take treatment, if you treat anybody, then why do we have to be a Sarasota County resident to speak here? My name's Michelle Posey, and I am a resident of Sarasota County, and your little attitude there is exactly why people are upset. Of course, you've been added to one of the world's best hospitals, but just because you win awards like that, does that mean we're incapable of error? I love that you're an award-winning hospital. I chose to have my second child here because it was a high-risk pregnancy. Of course, you're a highly ranked hospital, but that doesn't mean you're God and incapable of error. Somebody said in an article that they would like to move on and put this behind us. You know, I believe in God. Mercy and grace says, sure, yes, we should definitely move on from this. But love and compassion, when you hear the stories of people who did not get the correct treatment here, love and compassion says, not at the expense of those loved ones who lost people due to protocols that are still being dictated in this hospital. We're still here. We're not going anywhere. And if you don't know that, travel just a few miles down the road to a place called the Landings and see what happened during their last school board election. When you upset people in this community and you upset moms who just want to raise their kids, this is what happens. The community gets involved. We pay taxes to this hospital. We're demanding a third-party investigation. We want to work with you, but the recent statements that are demanding transparency and an external investigation is somehow a recruitment hindrance is a slap in the face to many. A community stands ready to engage you and embrace you, but some of you sitting there are making that extremely difficult, spewing animosity for those who are demanding transparency, coupled with the contempt of some to call people extremists just for showing up here and speaking out. That's egregious. Maybe you haven't heard, but taxation without representation is tyranny. So as long as you take my tax money, you're going to hear my voice loud and strong. And I want to say, I stand here with those who have lost loved ones because I had to listen to their stories today.
1 minute.
Thank you, I can read that. I had to listen to their stories today. It is extremely difficult to look at people who claim to love people and claim to want to support this community and not give them a third-party investigation. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that? I'm going to come here day after day and ask that same question because you gave your CEO a 7% pay increase and a 10-year extension of his contract, so money's not an obligation. If you want to do the right thing, you make the first move. Stop berating us to the fake news media and do a third-party investigation. Thank you.
Next is Dr. Barry Levine, followed by Dr. Joe Cirillo, followed by Charles Wilson.
Hello, my name is Dr. Barry Levin. Hello, my name is Dr. Barry Levin. I'm a resident of Sarasota County.
Thank you.
I'd like to come today. I want to talk about the hospital and some of its value I've seen it close at hand. And I'm going to give an example today of value that's given by the hospital to its community. And that is today I'm going to talk about the shock trauma unit at the hospital. An expensive undertaking, indeed. I was lucky enough to go to medical school at the University of Maryland, where we actually created the first shock trauma unit. But the shock trauma unit is very expensive. It's not something you make a lot of money on. The staffing is intensive with doctors, surgeons on call 24 hours a day. I and my family were able to take advantage of that one day. My mother-in-law was in Lakewood Ranch, fell, hit her head. She was brought to a Lakewood Ranch facility and quickly said, "We can't do anything for you. We really need to bring you to Sarasota Memorial Hospital." They did that. The family met with a neurosurgeon at 1 a.m. in the morning. We were able to do imaging, see a midline shift, see a subdermal hematoma, blood collecting in the skull. Neurosurgeon, after talking to the family, was able to do surgery a few hours later. And we had great results. Our mom was able to recover her speech, her ability to walk, and again, a very good outcome for her. These are services that are not available in most cities of this kind, I will tell you. And it takes a dedication by hospital staff to provide a service, not a moneymaker, but one that serves the interests of the citizens of Sarasota. And I would like to thank the hospital for services like this, and I and my colleagues are going to continue to speak out about these services in conjunction to this hospital. So I thank you for your service. I thank you for the services you're providing for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cirillo, followed by Mr. Charles Wilson, followed by Pat, I'm sorry, the handwriting, Pat Derby, I'm not sure on that one, from Sarasota. Dr. Cirillo.
My name is Dr. Joe Shrillo. I am a resident of Sarasota County. Mr. Hudson, members of the board, again, my name is Dr. Joe Shrillo. I practice family medicine in Englewood, Florida for over 34 years. I've treated hundreds of COVID patients. As a matter of fact, when I began using the newer protocols, I only had 2 patients who were actually admitted. So I'm very familiar with the disease process, and I have studied this extensively. I'm not here to run down Sarasota Memorial Hospital. I'm not here to be a headhunter, get anybody's job or anything. On the contrary, I believe Sarasota Memorial is an excellent hospital. Excuse me. I have had hundreds of patients over the years admitted here, did very well. My 2 sons and my 2 grandsons were born here, did very well. I've had 2 hips replaced here. So that being said, SMH blew it on COVID. Now, so did the rest of the hospitals in this country. I'm very well aware of that. And I think the initial response was understandable. We didn't know anything. I didn't immediately use these new protocols when COVID first came out. I was still learning. But what I've seen is a lack of progress. The example of remdesivir is absolutely true. By the time somebody's sick enough to be in the hospital, viral replication is done, and remdesivir works by blocking viral replication. So it's not going to work. The toxicity is unacceptable. The inability of your physicians to use medications in an off-label prescribing, such as ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, both extremely safe medications, but them not being allowed to give them early on. I mean, really? How can you tell a physician you can't use that medicine? You're not allowed to do that. That's insane. I've done that over my entire career and we've done well. You have to trust your practitioners. So what I would recommend is there's going to be another pandemic. I'm sure of it. Let's get on board. Let's be a little bit more prepared. I would highly recommend the board obtain your own independent medical counsel. Jim, no offense, but you're an employee of the hospital. I think the board needs to have their own. And I might say the same thing for legal counsel. But like I said, you got a great hospital. Let's take it up a notch. Let's not let this happen again, and let's begin to make changes so this doesn't happen again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Charles Wilson, followed by Paul Derbyshire, I believe is the name, followed by Josephine, this is new, I believe.
Hi, my name is Charlie Wilson. I'm a resident of Sarasota. I wrote a letter. Someone said I ought to read it here. I'm not a doctor, I'm a patient. As background, I'm a Sarasota resident. 5 years ago, I suffered a stroke while playing golf. I was playing with God and he gave me a stroke on the 13th.
I like it.
After a good stop at one of SMH's burn care facilities, I was rushed to the main hospital where a gurney family was taken directly to the ER, where I was given extraordinary personal and speedy and effective care. I have no lingering effects from the stroke. I'm one of the lucky ones because of the care I received as SMH. I'm 74 and had to make use either as a patient or a helper of another person in medical facilities on an emergency basis around the U.S. and the globe. NIH in Washington, New York City, Washington, D.C., Melbourne, Australia, Tokyo, Japan, to name a few. I've also made use of SMH as a patient, other than my stroke, and as a helper to elderly people who come here with various services. One of the emergency cases a month ago. I found to be one of the best medical facility experiences in my life. Medical practice is excellent and the patient experience is world class. But as one does not feel lost or abandoned, try the emergency room in New York City. We support SMH's management and its doctors. They have a great reputation of growing and bringing outstanding medicine to a wider and broader area at all levels of the community. Today it has been able to attract new medical staff, allowing it to maintain its excellence. SMH has been able to do this by focusing on medical best practices. I think it's for the medical practitioner to have an outside layman to determine the future of the medical practices of SMH. The board should not be in a position to make medical policies. The board's job is to set good governance practices, non-discrimination, financial responsibility, ethical practices, legal constraints, public policy. SMH's mandate in community serves its public nature makes sense. That is not to say it can be a private hospital. While there's still great debate on those, no survey review has shown SMH to be poorly run, either financially or medically. It's good reviews, as we've all seen. I believe there should be an open discussion. We should not keep looking backwards. As Marshall McLuhan said, we can't go forward with our eyes in the rearview mirror. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I appreciate your thinking. Paul Derbyshire, followed by Josephine, I'm sorry, and followed by Diane Thorpe. Yeah. Did I get your name right?
Paul Derbyshire, longtime resident.
Perfect.
1983.
Good, I'm 1986.
This pandemic has hurt a lot of people. To say at least me. To say at least probably all these people behind us. That's why we're standing here, having this conversation, debate, whatever you want to call it. Many people have lost lives in this thing. I have. Many lost many friends.
There's loads of people in nursing homes, which my mother is part of here in Sarasota, Florida. I cannot visit her for months at a time, which is understandable. But the amount of people that died in those nursing homes, that were uncared for, that weren't taken care of, that were forgotten about, what about those people? I urge the board to look at those type of things, not just your hospital, but other types. As Dr. Carrie Mitchell, is it Mitchell? Sorry. As the other doctors have stated here, there's a part of this hospital that you're asking for a third review. We are going to keep coming back and asking for that. So I would say in my part, look at what the people are saying. It is a people's state, correct? Yet you vote in between yourselves, not what we say, what you decide. I will yield my time.
Thank you so much. Dr. Josephine New, Diane Thorpe, followed by Michelle Letter. Please help me with your last name.
Yes, sure. My name is Josephine Ain. I'm not a resident of Sarasota County. I'm a resident of Ave Maria, Florida, and we don't have a hospital. So I can imagine some of the residents will come to Sarasota for care. So here I am.
You're welcome.
I have reviewed the Sarasota Memorial Healthcare Systems report on its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of the time constraint, I will limit myself to the following remarks. The individual cases were not reviewed by a body of independent investigators. Therefore, the report does not satisfy the demand made by the families and the public for transparency. Review by an internal quality committee alone does not satisfy the benchmark for an unbiased, impartial review. It is imperative that a hospital make a sincere effort to restore trust by establishing an investigation by an independent third party to review all cases of complaint, as well as the enshrined treatment protocols. I'm not sure if I mentioned I'm a physician, so I just wanted to give my 2 cents here. The mantra that there was no known treatment or cure in the early phase of the pandemic is not true. Rather, effective treatments for COVID-19 were suppressed across the nation. It was known early on that remdesivir did not improve the mortality outcome of COVID-19 patients. Worse yet, it has been associated with multi-organ injuries and deaths. As of October 2021, more than 7,000 reports were made to the WHO, including 560 deaths, 550 serious cardiac disorders, and 475 acute kidney injuries. This should prompt a series of reassessment of the current protocol for COVID-19 treatments. To this end, I urge the hospital to be courageous enough to be the leader in reassessing the COVID-19 treatment protocol, especially remdesivir, to ensure public safety. It is important to point out that the analysis of alternative treatments you have provided on page 19 in the report runs contrary to the actual experiences of many physicians nationally and internationally. I invite the physicians and staff members to be open to the real stories of success out there. Again, I urge Sarasota Memorial Hospital to restore trust by allowing an independent third party to review all cases and protocols. Be not afraid of the truth, for the truth will set you free.
Thank you, Doctor. Diane Thorpe, followed by Michelle Letter, followed by Lisa Roulette.
Good afternoon, my name is Diane Thorpe, I live in Manatee County.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
Sure. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, I came here because in my lifetime, there have been many sinful events. This hospital has saved my daughter's life, my granddaughter's life, and my husband's life. I cannot say that that doesn't help, because that's my feeling. But I can tell you one thing, when I sit here, and I've changed my whole speech, I want people to understand that this is all in retrospect. You were put on the spot, nobody had any choice. You had nurses, you had doctors, and you were under so much pressure. How can people expect you to be, they have high expectations of you, but you have never gone through this crisis before. How can they come up here 3 or 4 years later and say, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I don't know the whole story. I know I'm a public health, I was a public health nurse. And I know a lot of the things I hear up here are so contrary to public health policy and way diseases are transmitted. And another thing, how about personal responsibility? If you're going around without a mask, if you're going out, you're doing all this, how about comorbidities? How about diabetes, obesity? How about people that had 75 heart attacks even before they came to the hospital? Nobody here is talking about that. Well, I think that needs to be right up front in front of everybody. And if we have people in this audience that want different, they should go and start their own businesses and do what they want for their people. But they are not going to dictate to me what you should be doing for me, because I have had good care in this hospital, and you have saved 3 people in my lives. And I'm just so, they say anger comes from loss. I don't want to lose this hospital. I really feel that when you have 10,000 people working for you, you can't be responsible for their behavior and actions. I think these people here have terrible expectations, and I think they should do some personal responsibility and conscious searching before they come up here and knock the heck out of you guys. And that's my opinion. And they have freedom of choice, let them do what they want, but I want people that have sound medical knowledge taking care of me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Michelle Leonard, followed by Lisa Roulette, followed by Barbara Scissors. Help me on that one. Michelle, yeah, cool.
My name is Michelle Utter, not Michelle.
Excuse me.
It's fine, I'm with Swami.
Yeah.
All right, given the fact that I'm Michelle Utter, I do not live in this county, but I have family and friends that live this way that I care very deeply about.
And Ms. Utter, where do you live?
I believe it's written on the paper, so here we go playing his name again. I live in Port Orange, so that's in Volusia County. You're welcome. I came back because.
Start the clock for me. Okay, yeah.
Okay, now we established where I live, and then, maybe later on I'll tell you where I work since I'm censored there. I came back because I didn't like the way Dr. Lynch tossed out of here last time. So I thought I'd be a part of this again this week.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
My time.
Because he approached one of the board members while we.
And I know that, but my time is there.
So the clock was going to be. Got it.
But I just wanted on the record, I didn't appreciate the way he was, because he was an amazing doctor and he did not deserve that. And I'm Michelle, and I have 3 sons serving in the U.S. Navy. That's right. And I work in healthcare, and I'm also vaccine injured by Pfizer. I worked during the pandemic, so I remember taking these patients to the window just so they could see their loved ones outside, holding signs and everything else. During this time, I worked trying to while I was vaccine injured. But a lot of things irritated me after I found out that I'm vaccine injured, we're censored by the media, our government abandons us. And then on top of it all, you know, if you ever listen to Melissa McAtee, the whistleblower, how many people would have really gotten the vaccine if they would have known that it was made in China, just brought back over here with a Pfizer label on it? Your protocols, even remdesivir, is made by Pfizer. So I'm asking you, how much money did you make off of this? Because I know you get kickbacks because you have to have so many employees vaccinated or you don't get money for Medicare. On top of that, I know you got kickbacks from Pfizer, Moderna, what have you. In the meantime, we're sitting here suffering. I know last time you told me I have to come here and be treated because of my vaccine injury, and it's so hard getting doctors because we're gaslit. Believe me, I've been to many doctors. I have called some over here and I've been denied. Nobody wants to treat anyone with a vaccine injury. It's hard.
1 minute.
These vaccines are not safe and effective. By far, they're nothing more than a biochemical warfare put out. And on top of this, it was made for depopulation, and we all know that. I just want to sit here and look at you, and I want to know, can you look at yourself in the mirror? Can you sleep at night knowing that COVID came out, you followed your own protocols at the expense of this China-made thing, all of us getting vaccine injuries and such. Most of us wouldn't even got the vaccine. We need to be acknowledged.
Lisa, Simmons, followed by Scott Prentice. Welcome back, Lisa.
Hi, my name is Lisa Roulette, and I'm a resident of Sarasota County. To the board of members who currently support an independent investigation, hopefully all 9 of you, thank you for your research, your leadership, your courage, and your protection. In case there are any board members who do not support an independent investigation, hopefully none of you, there is no excuse. The evidence supports that this hospital denied effective early treatment protocols using correct doses of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and patients died unnecessarily. The evidence supports that the experimental genetic COVID vaccine causes more death and devastation than it helps. And yet this hospital still recommends that 6-month-old babies and everybody else older get injected repeatedly. It is a fact that patients believe they were mistreated here in this hospital, and leadership did not even seem to care. Our community has experts standing by on speed dial to answer any questions you have, so there is no excuse for not being informed. If any board members here do not support an independent investigation today, hopefully again none of you, I ask the following. Do you understand that studies our hospitals reference to justify their unreasonable restrictions on hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin have fatal design flaws, using too low a dose, too few doses, and starting treatment too late, and in the case of the recovery trial of hydroxychloroquine, inexplicably using doses so high they were potentially fatal. Yet you relied on studies like that to deny treatment. There is no excuse not to know this. For any board member not supporting an independent investigation, again, hopefully none of you, we will hold you accountable. For anyone who comes to Sarasota Memorial, outpatient or inpatient, who requested an evidence-based protocol like one published by the FLCCC and is denied, dies or suffers, we will hold you accountable. For any board member not supporting an independent investigation, did you read the book we gave you, Cause Unknown, The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths? Did you look at the CDC's vaccine adverse events system? If not, you are dropping the ball. Our Surgeon General here in Florida said that the vaccines have a terrible safety profile. Our internal review said that they did not find any connection at all between any deaths or serious adverse events between the COVID vaccine, after the COVID vaccine, and yet they admitted they don't have any systems in place to even check. For anyone currently not supporting an independent investigation, hopefully none of you, do you really want your legacy to be that you failed to look into any of this? Do you really want to wonder what could have been when all the heart, cancer, and autoimmune issues for these vaccines finally become public?
Thank you. Barbara Sanders, followed by Scott Prentice, followed by Michael Patrick Ely. I may have that wrong. Apologies.
I'm Barbara Scissors, and I am a resident of Sarasota.
Thank you.
I have had COVID. Fortunately, I did not wind up in the hospital.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I have had COVID. Fortunately, I did not wind up in the hospital. I just want to say thank you to this board and to this hospital. I have been a patient of Sarasota Memorial for something other than COVID, and also in Venice. I have received excellent care. I appreciate all the hard work that all the staff has done. You have a tough job. I don't wish it on anybody. Thank you for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Scott Prentice, followed by Michael Patrick Ely, followed by Marcia Davis.
My name is Scott Prentice. I'm from Nokomis.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I have absolutely zero medical experience at all. I'm a researcher and an artist.
That'd be nice if you just pick the microphone up and does it come on?
Thank you.
Perfect.
And I'm going to go ahead and approve you guys to go ahead and get your own mics too. This is ridiculous. See you guys pass mics. You guys got a, what, $160 million budget? This is why I find it very hard that there's any credibility coming out of this hospital. And not just Sarasota, talking nationwide. I was really excited to see that you guys made it one of the top hospitals in the world. That's one step forward. But what happened last week that went international was 2 steps back. And I'm telling you, this hospital needs an open and independent investigation on the COVID response. That's all I have to say.
Again, please hold the applause. Michael Patrick Ely, please help me with your last name. I apologize. Followed by Marcia Davis, followed by Saul Gilstein.
Whoops. The clock's went off. Oh, no, you can leave it.
No, second clock.
Oh, they got the rest of her time. Easier, can you hear me on this one?
Can someone check to see what the issue, the noise? Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, we'll start the clock over again.
All right, thank you. My name is Michael Patrick Feely. I've been here since 1976.
right? I teach at USF. I got all my shots. I've been jabbed. I got all the booster shots at USF Health in Tampa, where we were sent as employees. I taught during COVID under a lot of stress with a plastic shield. All my students wore the mask. And when I got that first shot, I was so proud of it. I put it up on that whiteboard, and I had every student send it to their parents. So they knew they were being taught by somebody who was safe, someone who believed in the institutions in this country. All right? It sounds like not too many of you do. Well, I do, and I believe in service memorial. And last July 12th, my life was, well, I should say, I got a new lease on life. I had severe aortic stenosis, and I went through this type of procedure. And I didn't know, but Dr. Jonathan Hoffberger, who's sitting here today, I still have a little note that he wrote. And it said, CT okay. Good for TAP, Dr. Hoffberger. Thank you very much. Because I did not have COVID. My sister got COVID. I watched her die. All right? I followed the protocol. I couldn't go in the room. It wasn't here at the hospital. It was at hospice. But I like the woman who talked about personal responsibility. How many people have gotten all the shots in this room? Who have gotten all of the boosters in this room? Who have lived according to what their doctors told them? I did. And I was successful. Personal responsibility. Don't be bellyaching, complaining. Get a life of your own and do what's right. Right? When you work with your doctors, my doctor, Yamada, he told me during COVID, he said, Maya, you have this severe aortic stenosis, we gotta watch out for it. But I couldn't come in, it was COVID, it wasn't. I was asymptomatic, I was good, I was healthy, and last August they took care of me. I worked out 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at the Sarasota Memorial Fitness Center down off of Iran. Let me tell you something, take personal responsibility, quit bellyaching, and a tsunami of COVID. They did a great job. I'm with Sarasota Memorial.
Let's go about and move forward. Marcia Davis, followed by Saul Kilstein, followed by Charles Casey.
Good afternoon. I'm Marcia Davis. I live in Venice, which is Sarasota County.
Thank you.
I apologize for my appearance. I came directly from the Cooperative Extension. I'm a master gardener and I volunteer in their demonstration gardens, so I came directly from the garden. As you know, as I said, my name is Marcia Davis. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I have a master's degree in nursing. My husband, Dr. George Davis, is a physician, and he also has a master's degree in bioethics. And together we have more than 60 years of healthcare experience. We're retired and we live locally. I was a patient at Sarasota Memorial Hospital last year, and I can attest, because I'm very judgy, about the excellent quality of medicine and nursing care that Sarasota Memorial Hospital provides. And I just want to say thank you and to please continue to do your work based on science and compassion, and with the assistance of the CDC, the National Institute of Health, and all the other people that provide epidemiologists and the expertise that you need to help you do your job. And just want to say thank you so much. I got the best care as a patient ever, and I'm so grateful that you are in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Houston, followed by Charles Casey, followed by Stephen Marlin.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I'm Saul Kinsey. After 40 years in health policy and
Sorry if I interrupt. Are you a resident of Sarasota County?
I was going to say, what brought me to the Sarasota area 5 years ago was the healthcare system in Sarasota. We looked at a number of other areas, and the reputation of Sarasota Memorial was a winning decision maker. I wanted to speak to two issues. We've thrown a lot of numbers around. My background as a Medicaid director, working for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in over 2 decades, working for a global research-based pharmaceutical company, has taught me that numbers are important, that clinical trials are important, but they're not the only thing you have to look at. What real world evidence shows you, but when you're hearing these stories, and there are tragedies, there are human consequences of medical decisions, there's the tort system, there are outcomes that we can't prevent, but human decisions, as one of my predecessors, individual responsibility is part of that. You know, when you look at the U.S., 1.1 million deaths occurred due to COVID. In Florida itself, 87,000 deaths as of this month. 662 million doses of vaccines were given in the United States. Yes, there were adverse events, but it also, as my immediate predecessor spoke to, I had 3 COVID boosters. I did get COVID, but it was like a cold, did not require hospitalization. So individual responsibility is an important event. But I want to talk to you about, with my remaining minute, is privatization. If you talk to residents of Venice Island, Bones and Coors sold it to a proprietary hospital. That hospital chain sold it to another hospital. And in the dark of night, it was decided it was not a profit-making investment, and that hospital closed. The consequences for SMH is dire. When you look at the senator from Florida, his CEO tenure at Columbia HCA resulted in the largest fine of any hospital in American history, over $1.7 billion. The NBER recently put out a study that I commend to the board of what happens when privatization takes place of nonprofits. They make decisions that put Medicaid patients on the street, uninsured patients on the street, and discriminates against those patients that aren't profit-making for the hospital system. I implore you, turn away those who invite you to privatize this hospital system.
Thank you for your time. I think we can check the microphones, if y'all will just bear with us a minute. So while they're doing that, Charles Casey, followed by Stephen Marlin, followed by Andre Harris. Welcome, Mr. Casey.
My name is Charles Casey. I'm actually a resident of Bennington County. I have used Sarasota Memorial Facilities in Bennington County. And I was concerned about the nature of the protests to be here today. And I decided to come out and stand in support of Sarasota Memorial Hospital. I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you so much. Mr. Stephen Marlin, and Ms. Tanya Harris, followed by Mr. Donald Black.
So I don't know if it'd be a refreshing change, but I'm not going to talk about COVID. My name is Stephen Marlin. I
I'm a resident of Sarasota, Sarasota, and I work at Sarasota. I like to bring good reviews. Okay, I'm back to talk about the training assignment that was given to all SMH employees on January 3rd entitled SMHCS LGBTQ Inclusion and Health. And I want to start by saying I'm not against any individual. I'm addressing the agenda and the forces behind it because this started out years ago. They used to tell us stay out of our bedroom. Well now they were satisfied with that. Because now we're in our living rooms. If you watch any TV, any movies, they're in your living room, they're in your movie theaters, they're in our colleges, they're going after our children in our elementary schools, and now they're Sarasota Memorial Hospital. This is a highly political and cultural division in our society. And Sarasota Memorial has jumped into the political and cultural fray here by sending this out. I asked these questions last time I was here. I wanted to know, why does it make sense out an assignment like this to all employees? There are so many groups, people who are different from each other. So why this group? There are special groups in different countries and specialties and things that different people believe differently, different religions. There's so many. So why is this group special? Why is this make provoking us, with this device type of training? I'm pretty sure that all you guys are Republicans on this board. Our state and our U.S. representatives in this country are conservative Republicans. I don't understand the science. Nobody answered me on this. What I did learn was an assignment from the healthcare health screens is optional, unless it says mandatory, which seems like a strange way to manage people. But anyway, speaking of science, a man will never bear a child, will never have a functioning womb. A woman will never have sperm. Never. So if we're, our doctors and nurses learn anatomy, it's going to be more basic science. But yet, we're sending this out to all of our employees. Why? I think we need an answer for that because you jumped into this conversation. And I think it's shameful. I'm not against anybody, but I'm against the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marlowe. Ms. Tanya Harris, Mr. John Black, and Dr. Jane Ruby. Welcome back, Tanya.
Hello. Good afternoon, board members. Tanya Bruce, Sarasota County Moms for America. I do reside here.
Oh, 1 second. Please start the clock. Okay, good.
Thank you. I didn't prepare a speech as normal. I wanted to look at everybody, see how everyone's doing. I know we've been through a lot in the last few months since the new board was installed. And I do want to thank you all for putting up with a lot of stuff. Okay, just like we have. So I just want to thank you. Secondly, I want to make a note. We've got to stop with the name calling. That's terrible. What we came here to do back in November was to look at you all and just hear the stories, hear the compassion, hear the pain. That's what we were here for. It's not about a political agenda. I know everybody loves to reference that. We could even shout them up to the hills too, right? Then we get nowhere. What are we doing here? These articles that were put in the paper, it's kind of funny. New York Times took us out. That's pretty interesting. Sarasota County, New York Times. So Mike Flynn, a mega activist, waged war against a Florida hospital. SMH officials say organized critics have political agenda. COVID politics leave a Florida public hospital shaken. This is as far as it goes with most people, the headlines, and I think we can all relate to that. I think our patience is worn thin on everything we do in life. We barely have enough time to go home and cook dinner for our kids anymore. So when these media come in, they need to be truthful, they need to be honest. You guys need to be honest, we need to be honest, we all need to work together. We've been completely divided. What we asked for was a third-party investigation. Nobody can investigate themselves. This will just irritate everybody here. It's not that we don't believe you did a good job. It's not that we believe you didn't look into details. It's just that it just can't be done. So if you want the public to kind of calm down, I would suggest you offer that opportunity up. It's very simple. I can assure you, if you guys have even a suggestion, have a town hall. Be open to listening to what we say and be able to converse with us. Maybe we just don't understand what you guys are going through. Maybe you guys don't understand what we're going through. I'm giving you these suggestions because in these statements here, you lied about us. You lied. So I'm coming here to be honest with you, to tell you what we really want. And we want closure. And it looks different for everybody. Okay? So I'm giving you some suggestions, so maybe next month we don't see this in the paper. Thank you.
Mr. Donald Black, followed by Dr. Jenny Ruby, followed by Ms. Lynn Massaroni.
My name is Don Black. I'm ready for the big Okay. Don Black, I'm a resident of Sarasota County. As a patient here, did a colonoscopy. I'm mostly been a physician researcher. And when I was an intern, take care of AIDS patients at the University of Michigan. And it was a very frightening time, especially for the patients and their families and those of us who are physicians. And we probably didn't do everything the way we were supposed to. And a lot of the AIDS patients and their families were upset with us. There's the same kind of bigotry that some of us see here today. But what they did was that eventually they got over their anger and used that concern in the right way. They improved the way that drugs are approved. The fast track system that's now present for the university. For when I was developing a drug called Lipitor, which is a cholesterol lowering drug, we were the first drug that wasn't an AIDS or cancer drug to be approved under cancer. So there is a place where our concerns and our anger can be directed that may improve in the future. But right now, all of the evidence indicates that these other drugs, like ivermectin, are not useful, and that they shouldn't be part of what's used in medical practice. And that the data is very clear on that. And that there are oversight boards already that look at how hospitals operate. And those are made up of other physicians and other researchers. So I think that there's no need for a further investigation of this hospital or this board. Thank you very much.
Please refrain from hollering. All right, Dr. Jenny Ruby, followed by Lynn Massaroni, followed by Dr. John Littell.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Jane Ruby, resident of Palm Beach County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before all of you today. I'm a medical professional who is now part of the independent media in the United States. I'm a licensed nurse practitioner, internal medicine, subspecialty cardiology. I'm a graduate of the University of Rochester with 2 earned doctorates and 2 master's degrees in nursing and the other in international pharmacoeconomics and health economics. I'm a former nursing professor and taught nursing undergraduate and graduate nursing at the University of Loves. I also spent 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry and medical research. Before 2020, I never saw the degree of neglect, subrogation of patient rights, and out assault on human beings
that have been reported by patients in your hospital and countless other hospitals in the United States. Sarasota Memorial Hospital is the poster child for the killing fields American hospitals have become.
Ms. Ruby, you are on the front.
Today, I am speaking for the hundreds of families that stand behind me, that have written to me or appeared on my show to tell their stories of their loved ones, their last days in this and other hospitals. Patients deprived of food and water, forced narcotics, deadly failed drugs forced on them like remdesivir, forced into mechanical ventilation. As a nursing professor, I taught the skills of nursing, but I knew I couldn't teach the compassion and the integrity. So I looked for it. I looked for the protective instincts in my nursing students because they would be going out and be responsible for being with patients alone in their most vulnerable moments. They had to be trustworthy.
1 minute.
Nursing quality is judged by patients, sir, not Newsweek magazine or remote nursing journals. I came here today to ask your nurses and your doctors one question. How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you go home and hug your children and your grandparents after witnessing, after hanging those remdesivir bags day after day and watching people suffer and choke on endotracheal tubes? Nurses that stay enable these actions and these outcomes. And the American people are watching you in every hospital now.
Thank you for your time. Lynn Massaroni, followed by Dr. John Littell, and followed by Reverend Jay Woolen.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Mastroni, and I am a resident of Sarasota County.
Thank you.
And I'd like to congratulate the hospital and the board on your stellar ratings. I didn't know that. It's really a wonderful thing to hear. I'm not a physician, nor do I think I'm one because I can read the internet. But I approach you as a potential user of your services. And I urge the board to remember your responsibility to support the best interest of the community in accordance with the CDC and NIH and like organizations, and not be a party to advancing the political football of the pseudoscience in the name of freedom that is prevalent in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dr. John Littell, followed by Reverend Jay Woolen, followed by Ann Anderson. Welcome back, Doctor.
Thank you. I'll use the rest of her time for my introduction. We had a good introduction the first time. If I could just explain a bit.
Your name for the record and where you reside.
Yes, well, you got my name. It's Dr. John Littell. I'm a family physician. I reside in Ocala, Florida. I'm a husband of 34 years, father of 6 children, a family physician who really has the honor of taking care of patients in their homes, in the office, and in 5 different hospitals around central and west central Florida. And I'm here to, well, first of all, before I get that, the 1 minute thing, you know, this, my previous time as chief of staff at hospitals and my military experience, it's not really a good field. And I'm looking for, so please refrain from the 1 minute thing. It makes you look like a bad guy. And that's what the problem is. We are not dealing with bad guys and good guys here. I mean, I talked to my 14-year-old son about why I got on the news all of a sudden. It's not about bad guys and good guys. No doctor, no nurse, no administrator comes to work expecting to do their worst, expecting people to die, right? We need to get into medicine for people to die. We came trying to do the best we could, but it's not about bad guys, it's about bad protocols. It's about the protocols that denied these life-saving measures to people. And you did make exceptions in the hospitals, and the exceptions were people in the critical care units, or had been denied for as long as they were in the ward and before. They were denied monoclonal antibodies once they hit the door of the hospital. You know that happened? They were denied it. They had, I told patients to eat or get out and get monoclonal antibodies, not in the hospital. They were denied visitation, even though housekeepers and dietary staff would go in and out of their rooms, if you will. And then I was told they can have their visitors once they get DNR status. Then you can have a mother. You know, there is no hope, right, for these patients when you're denying them this. They were given remdesivir, they were inadequately anticoagulated, and we had robust evidence about the need to anticoagulate these people with high doses of Lovenox. We had robust evidence to use high-dose steroids. They were denied that. And then most recently, we have been testing people. This is why Dr. Fiorigo, when he said in his times, he said, we're over, right? Why are we moving on? We're over COVID. Well, no, you're not. You're still testing people coming in for COVID. And these COVID tests are being used to isolate them and give them. I got a phone call 1 week ago at midnight from a wife whose husband in the Orlando area had been admitted with leukemia and pneumonia, and they were putting him on remdesivir. I had to call the pulmonologist and remind him that this guy, even though he tested positive for COVID, was not COVID pneumonia. And the pulmonologist said, well, we have our protocol. He's the second pulmonologist I've spoken to. The second one who said, you know, we're just testing them, and if they're positive, we give remdesivir. I said, well, what did you do before we had remdesivir, when people came in with pneumonia, ARDS, right? Essentially, what I'm saying this, right? When we as doctors have to tell people, I'm sorry you've lost your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, we can no longer come back with the excuse we followed protocol because no one buys it anymore. We've seen what the protocols do. Please get away from the lockstep mentalities that I was told are happening. And if you're really sorry that people lost their loved ones, be the first to admit it. And thank you very much for your treatment of me. I apologize for visiting with the board member at the last visit. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe we need to hear from the Reverend Jay Woolen, Ann Vanderstill, and Brian Marcus.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Reverend Jay Woolen of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Sarasota. I serve here in Sarasota and I live in Sarasota. We all need to just take a deep breath. Everybody just take a deep breath. That's for me as much as for you, trust me. So, because clearly there's a lot of pain here and people who have suffered, and that suffering gets expressed in anger, and I understand that. I also want to be here and advocate for all the thousands and thousands upon thousands of people who have been saved by this hospital and who have lived because of the vaccine. I am someone who's immunocompromised due to cancer treatments. I've gotten 4 vaccines, the 4 that I've been allowed to get. And I have many members, most of all, who have been vaccinated. Very few have died from COVID. So I think we need to look at the whole big picture. It's a horror whenever somebody dies. And so I recognize that suffering, but so many have lived because of the vaccine and the work of this hospital. I also want to mention, my religion is based on principles, including justice, equity, compassion, and human relations, and the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And that means everybody counts. And so, for me, it is very important to advocate for a public hospital for the public, in support of the public, not a private hospital that only cares about the profits for its shareholders. So I am in support of this hospital being a strong public hospital in the community. We believe in the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and so thus we always adapt, and I know the hospital adapts as we get new learning and new information. We adapt, and we do that in religion just as you do in the hospital. And last, to the person you asked, I know you can't answer them directly, about LGBTQ individuals and why we need to have separate training for diversity, because different people, particularly LGBTQ individuals, have different health issues, number one, than other people who are straight. Also, they have issues where they have been consistently over time oppressed and discriminated against, and that goes for multiple diversities. And so it is important to become aware of our fellow citizens and what their issues are and how to interact with them, because we are all here, okay? We are all different. And so we need to learn to love each other more. And we do that by educating ourselves about each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. Next is Ian Vanderstill, followed by Ryan Artis, followed by Josh Yoder. Back, Ms. Vanderstill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Ann Vanderstill, I live in Osprey in Sarasota County. I'm the president and chair of the Zalego Freedom Foundation. And I want to bring the facts because we thank you have our book. I hope you read it. It's a wonderful read. Great. I want to bring the facts because we're hearing so much information, and obviously, like I stated last time, it's very highly charged because everybody cares. I know everybody in this room cares. Everybody believes we're all trying to do the right thing. But these are the facts. A study published by the NIH, government agency in 2005, reported that chloroquine had strong antiviral effects on the SARS-CoV-2 infection. The inhibitory effects were observed when the cells were treated with the drug either before or after exposure, showing that it could be used for prophylactic or therapeutic use. This brings me to the discussion on remdesivir. This is what we're talking about in a hospital setting, being treated for COVID-19. Oddly enough, by the way, the WHO decided remdesivir was not a good treatment for COVID-19. The speed of science addressed in facts. NIH funded the University of Chapel Hill Ralph Barrett's down in 2017 to 21 in an academic corporate partnership between Gilead Sciences and the Barrett Lab at UNC. Right after that, between 2018 and 2019, the NIH and WHO funded a clinical study in the Democratic Republic of Congo conducting a human trial using remdesivir to treat Ebola. And between 53% and 86% of the patients died, thus halting the study, terminating it because of the lethality of remdesivir. Knowing this, in April of 2020, on the Speed of Science, Dr. Fauci stated that whenever we have clear-cut evidence that a drug works, we have an ethical obligation to immediately let the people know who are in the placebo group so they can have access. On May of 2020, remdesivir gained EUA status. Fast forward to August 1st, 2022, the Health Resource and Service Administration launched the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, and out of the COVID-19 injuries or death portion, there were 294 claims of injury or death. 100 of those claims are from the use of remdesivir. 98 of those patients died. These are the facts. I have them all annotated. Remdesivir costs $3,120 for 5 days of treatment. CMS is paying extra money if you're using all the approved drugs by the CDC protocols, the FDA, etc. Additional payments being made. The only hitch is the hospitals must ensure they make connections to Medicare bonus for the COVID-19 patients. You see, the question must be asked, has Sarasota Memorial Hospital put profits over patient safety? Have all hospitals in the country put profits over safety based on the dangling carrot of money? Has the lure of big money been this motivation all along? But here's the bonus. I'm super optimistic. You all are the golden goose right now, and you have the golden egg. You can be the change agent for all hospitals in this nation because all eyes are on you. Rebuke the protocols that aren't working and look at the facts that have been projected by the own government agencies. Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Brian Artis, followed by Mr. Josh Yoder, followed by Colonel Dr. Peter Chambers. Say again? Okay, thank you. Mr. Josh Yoder, followed by Colonel Dr. Peter Chambers, followed by Gail McCray.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak. I have a front row seat, so I'm actually, a resident of North Carolina. And I'm here today in support of Dr. Littell. I found it abhorrent the way that he was treated.
Well,
Some of the president of, I'm sorry.
Pertinent you'd like to talk about?
Yes, absolutely.
How about making your point? I don't.
If please restart when it's on. So my name is Josh Yoder. I'm the president of the organization known as U.S. Freedom Flyers. I'm a major airline pilot for a U.S. carrier. In 2015, I was a bush pilot in Africa, working in the UN camps, different places where the remdesivir trials were going on. And I saw the tremendous levels of death and destruction that were happening there. And I was working with medical personnel on the ground and realized that it was the remdesivir that was causing the deaths. As you can imagine, when remdesivir was rolled out as a protocol in hospitals across this nation, I was appalled. I know of many cases myself. I work with organizations such as Prosecute Now, Stanford Graham and Dr. David Martin, who are actually focused on bringing criminal charges against the people, the manufacturers of remdesivir, and those who are administering it. That's a work in progress. Dr. Fauci is one of the people with the target on his back. Anyway, at U.S. Freedom Flyers, we're focused on individual rights, especially for U.S. pilots. We were forced into getting the vaccines, and the fallout for that has been absolutely incredible. Let me give you some statistics. At American Airlines, between January and July of 2022, there was a 300% increase in long-term disability claims among airline pilots. You see the staffing shortages that are going on. And I would like to point out the number of piloting capacitations. If you're paying attention, in the past 4 days, the past 12 days, we had 4 piloting capacitations. We have the stories of Cody Flynn, 50 hours after the first Pfizer vaccine, a very perfectly healthy 33-year-old pilot, completely passed out while flying his aircraft. He doesn't remember landing. He has 4 doctors. They all say it was directly vaccine related. Then we also have Captain Bob Snow, who he developed some clinical myocarditis. 6 minutes after the touchdown of American Airlines 1067 from Denver to Dallas Fort Worth, Captain Snow collapses in the flight deck. Unfortunately, there was a nurse and Navy foreman on board. They were able to revive him. He's been very vocal with his story. We have Patrick Ford, 90 seconds after being cleared for takeoff at an airliner in Chicago. That aircraft was between 2,000 and 3,000 feet. Patrick Ford died in that seat. Unfortunately, it was a very experienced Czech airman who was flying in the right seat and landed that aircraft. Just in the past 2 days, we had another pilot incapacitation. He's deceased. Another major airline captain going back to Guatemala City, Chicago, collapses in cardiac arrest and flight diverted to Houston. We have a major problem. And I would love to see this hospital actually look into the cause of these injuries. As you've already heard from a vaccine-injured individual today, I work with hundreds of just airline pilots alone that are severely vaccine-injured. They're never going to fly again. They've lost their flight medicals. And so they come to us for hope and for help because they're not getting into hospitals. And it's doctors like Dr. Littell and others who are actually stepping forward to treat them. And I would love to see you also start to pursue these protocols and these options that are actually changing people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Peter Chambers, Mr. Dr. Welcome.
Good to be here, sir. I'm from Texas. I'm not from here. But my mother's retired up in Texas. I do come here a bit north here.
I have your address is in Oklahoma.
That's my home record. I'm in the military. Was that was my home record.
Are you still on active duty?
No, sir. I'm retired. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd have to give you a different disclaimer.
Start his clock again.
All right. So from 1983 to 2022, I wore a uniform in the United States military. 39 years, sir. I had a break in service at college in the Meadows. Back after 9/11, and I didn't know we were going to be down the range for another 20 years. I've served as an infantryman, a paratrooper, a Green Beret, special operations supply structure. I was also a special staff assistant to the United States Army Special Operations Command, Governor Abbott during the COVID operation in Texas. I was on his special staff and a liaison with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, of the United States. Also, I was an advocate for soldiers. That was my most important job. I was an advocate in this position. And that's what I do now. I speak. But I'm also here in support of Dr. Littell, a friend and also fellow veteran. The most in this operation, and this is, we are at war, ladies and gentlemen. We're at war. This is war for our minds. We don't know. And I see the vision. And as an American and a person that has been downrange and been in several combat theaters, I see what people do to each other. And they divide us. They shouldn't divide us. We should unite ourselves. Because it's a Hegelian dialectic. It's a dialectic in order to produce a synthesis that divides us. People make mistakes. I've done it. I've been on my knees like in close blood, working on a soldier, and may have done the wrong thing because I was scared and under duress. I may have. I will never fault somebody for pivoting if they decide that they made a mistake and they're willing to talk about it. I will never fault the person. And I don't know the details of what happened here or any other hospital other than the ones that I've worked at as an emergency room physician. Collectively, what has happened to the practice of medicine? My dad was a small town doctor. And he went around trading reserves for medicine. The injections, I was a vaccinated soldier. I had to take it. They're not safe, they're not effective. What I'd like to say is, don't let financial decisions run protocols. Investigate what happened so that you can learn from it, like an after-action report that we did in the military. Find out what happened. Autopsies, when did they go out the window? I'm a nurse that somebody died at the age of 27, I had one. In the military, I lost 4 soldiers in one trip on it. In one operation on the border than I did in one of my trips down range due to mandated shots and remdesivir. This green beret right here signifies the motto, Dio Presto Libera, to free the oppressed. Let's free our minds of the divisiveness that's happening, and let's get together and be Americans, because united we stand and divided we fall. Thank you, sir.
All right, next is Gail McCray, followed by Sean Bartlett, followed by Cynthia Strong.
Good afternoon. My name is Gail McCray. I am not a resident. I'm a healthcare worker with ethics.
Right, in fact, in AMS, you listed your address in Santa Rosa. Are you from California?
Yes, sir. I'm from California.
Thank you.
I worked there as a nurse, and I went to school to become a nurse practitioner while living in California. I worked in the Bay Area for Kaiser Permanente. I worked on the COVID floors. I'm one of these ethical practitioners that refuse to follow these protocols. I witnessed remdesivir causing serious harm and death in my patients. It is not safe and effective. I wanted to address a few other things. When did we forget the power of natural immunity? Vaccines were created to emulate natural immunity. Why are we throwing this out the window? We've had 300 years of experience with natural immunity, knowing that it surpasses every vaccine ever created.
Please hold your applause.
Next, I would like to talk about my experience in graduate school. I was studying a double nurse practitioner's master's in women's health and nurse midwifery. I ended up doing a project to finish my master's degree that included deep diving into CDC, WHO, and ACOG medical recommendations. Because of those ethics of mine, I went and read those statements. And then I saw the 46 peer-reviewed articles cited at the bottom of those statements. And because of my ethics, I chose to go into every single one of those peer-reviewed studies and read them. I did not read the conclusion, I read the entire paper. And what I discovered is that 44 out of 46 of those papers did not reflect what the medical recommendations that was being made by the CDC and the WHO. They were not reflected in the data. They might have been reflected in the conclusion. Those other 2 studies, because there were 46 total. One of them was on a population from 1995 that did not apply to the topic being presented in the ACOG recommendation and the CDC recommendation. And the last paper had a letter to the editor disputing the facts in the paper. It was an inaccurate document. So what I learned in that experience is that these organizations are making protocols for something other than science. What is that? I'm not gonna speculate, but that's the fact. That is something that I saw with my own eyes, and I've seen it roll out with COVID. So I would urge you to please get an independent scientific review board to look at the data, because it's not what you're being told it is. And the CDC and the WHO and ACOG and AMA are not looking out for our best interests. There's a financial incentivization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll pause for 1 second and ask Mr. Pettifer if you would take my chair. I have to take. This is Brad Baker, he is the vice chairman, and I have to take what?
Okay, Sean, Art, and then Cynthia Shaw, and then Susan Moore.
Thank you.
Okay, that's Sean Marchant.
All right.
I'm a Florida native, moved to Sarasota when I was in 3rd grade. Graduated from high school, USF, UF, been here a lot, grew up here. My mother was a medical technologist here. I was a phlebotomist here back in the day. My family depended on Sarasota Memorial Hospital over all of these years. I had surgery a couple years back and a broken ankle. Back in the day, I was a science major, and then I switched to broadcast journalism and was a television reporter. And I have to say, I've been pretty shocked at the attacks on this hospital's treatment protocols for COVID, especially since this hospital did a better job on average than many. Now, hindsight 2020, you look back and say, did we use all the best systems and protocols? Could we have done something better? But it was a time of extreme crisis. You all were swamped and overloaded. I feel for the staff who worked so hard through the crisis, the hourly decisions that needed to be made, and I trust this hospital's leaders far more than most private hospitals. The misinformation on the situation is horrific. I really don't like online threats, violence, and abuse of people either. For far more people died as a result of the anti-vax, far-right social media platforms that drive COVID misinformation and disinformation than died in our hospitals. I know dozens of people personally, friends, relatives, who died because they did not get vaccinated. All of my friends and acquaintances that were vaccinated, even when I got COVID, they survived, including my father-in-law, who was 96 years old, and he recovered quickly after a short stay in a hospital. I blame someone, blame the anti-vaxxers. The concept of taking a hospital is insane. It happened in Asheville, a great public hospital went private. The treatment tanked, the best staff left. We don't want that to happen here in Sarasota. I think the people who have the correct information, take science seriously, are going to make some of the better decisions. And by the way, the Pfizer vaccine was not developed in China. And FYI, I'm a lesbian with the same wife for 36 years with 2 adopted children that the straight couple wouldn't adopt because mother just positive on a drug test. You cannot ruin a person's sexuality. My kids are all straight, okay? And grooming is far more likely to be done by family members or other people than 90% of the doctors.
Thank you for your time. Thank you very much. All right, Cynthia, Sean.
My name is Cynthia Sharp, and I am a resident of Sarasota. I really wish Travis in here. You don't know how long it's gonna be till he comes back.
Do you want, Susan Morgan is next, do you want to go, Susan? You can stand. And then after Susan Morgan is Gwen McKinsey.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Susan Morgan, and I'm from Sarasota. I just want to say that I'm upset by the attacks against Sarasota's public hospital. Threats are being aimed at my former co-workers and those who put their lives and the safety of their families at risk for the public. I've lived in Sarasota for 72 years, and this is my county hospital, of which I'm very proud. I worked at Sarasota Memorial as a registered nurse for 38 years. SMH offers an inpatient, outpatient, rehab, maternity services, a neonatal unit, a trauma tower, an oncology tower, and mental health building being built, which private hospitals do not provide. A public hospital is required to be transparent, but private hospitals do not have to give any report of their actions. COVID was a time of crisis. There was a refrigerator truck parked outside the morgue to accommodate the large volume of COVID deaths. Sarasota Memorial's research physicians work tirelessly at the local and global level. The CDC guidelines were being followed, as I believe all the hospitals and facilities with patients were required to do. Sarasota Memorial's COVID outcomes have been shown to be the best in the state thanks to following these guidelines. Sarasota Memorial, as a public hospital, reached out to our community and did what was right for everyone. We should all be thanking the dedicated staff. How does criticism or bullying the hospital staff benefit anyone? I believe that some people are being used to turn our wonderful hospital into a private hospital for private gain. If they succeed, we stand to lose the high quality physicians and the magnet status nursing staff that we now attract. Please stand up for your community and your public hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cynthia Strong, followed by Gwen McKinsey, followed by Nick Catarino. Strong, I understand you want me to be here. I've heard you on several occasions and your story.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say that, first off, I am a member of Sarasota County.
Yes.
Resident. And I appreciate emails that we have traded back and forth to each other.
Yes.
And I don't believe in any of them I've ever bullied you at all, have I?
You have not.
Thank you.
You've been very courteous.
Last month, I did not speak. I wanted to give you all a chance to prove yourselves to me. I so desperately wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt. Every single one of you. Your report said that the MEC ensured COVID patients received the most current standard of care based on rapidly evolving guidelines and emerging therapies. Who's the MEC? Who's calling the shots? Who is giving what the most current standard of care should be? Where are the rapidly evolving guidelines coming from? Who and where were the emergency therapies coming from? Has the MEC been investigated to make sure there were no conflicts of interest? Here we are, still asking more questions. The same thing that is repeated constantly in your report is Sarasota Memorial Hospital is lower than all other hospitals in the premier study. That is a continual pat on the back. A we are better than they statement. It still does not address what I have asked over and over again. As someone who has asked the questions, your report felt to me from somebody who lost somebody in this hospital, and I have valid questions. And I'm telling you right now, every one of you know I have valid questions. because you were trusted in the investigation of Eric's death. Your report felt like me, that our numbers are better than their numbers. How dare you question what happened to Eric? Premier told us we are better than them. You should be grateful that your family member was in our hospital and not theirs. Really? Hence why I still do not have answers. Even your report about Eric had no answers. Because you're comparing your 91% to their 89%, and you're still forgetting about the questions I've asked about the 9%. I didn't get a chance to, but I was going to make you all a pan of brownies today. This was 91% good ingredients and 9% dog poop, and asked you which one wanted to eat them or serve them to your family. None of you were, but I ended up with the 9%. So I'm going to finish with this statement. Eric was force-fed a protocol that someone decided was the standard of care as quoted in your report, and yet you still did not address the 9%. You have not answered my questions. There's a scripture verse that says, "For we do not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves, but they, measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise." I'm asking for an independent investigation. When you do an investigation, you usually bring the people in that it is affected and ask questions.
Cynthia, please say it. Here's my commitment to you. You and I have gotten to know each other.
Yes, we have, and I really appreciate that.
Here's my commitment. I know that we have tried to set up a meeting with you, with the medical staff here. And I will tell you today, we will meet at any time you would like to come in. I'll sit in on that meeting with you so that they can talk to you frankly about your husband's case, because, you know, I've heard your story several times. You gave us pictures of your husband. I feel for you. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm committed to help you understand what happened. And I will meet with you, Dr. Theoreka, and whoever to help you understand. So
I appreciate that.
You be agreeable to that.
I would be agreeable to that.
Thank you. We'll be in
I have to right
Okay, well, that's.
Just because.
Everybody didn't tell you.
Okay.
But anyway, whatever.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Next, will be Gwen McKenzie, followed by Nick Catarino, and mispronounce it, and Barbara Vaughn. Welcome, Ms. McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Gwen McKenzie. I do reside in Sarasota County. I'm a longtime healthcare CEO, 9 years of which were leading this health system. I did read the 58-page report by the third party, Premier Incorporated. Premier is an organization that is known to many of us in the field. It's a quality improvement organization. And they have a database of 1,300 hospitals, not 1,300 hospitals here in Florida, but 1,300 hospitals across the nation. And so the results that were in the 58-page report were, as you've heard today, in varying ways, better mortality, which actually does equate to saving lives if we were to calculate that, less complications, a shorter length of stay. Was it perfect? No. There were recommendations that came out of that report that were conducted here. One of which was the post-acute care, what we call step-down care, was inadequate as people left the hospital. So there are always things to learn and always things to do. My second point is on privatization. When I hear privatization, we have heard it through the years around the United States, not just here in Florida. To me, that really says sell the hospital, because when you privatize a hospital, you're not sitting in a meeting like this. We would never have a meeting like this if the hospital were private or sold. We would never have a meeting where we hear the CEO report, we hear the intricacies of the financials, we hear a quality report, we hear the medical staff report. You would never hear anything like that, because that's not what private hospitals do. You would never hear the plan for facilities that meet community need, or how we need to grow to better serve the community. You just would not hear that. You would not hear the conduct of the committees and, remind our public that the committees also are open to the public. You wouldn't hear any of that. So transparency is sort of antithetical when you talk about privatization. It's really not transparency at all. It's another word for self. My third point and final point, and I spoke to you about this before, is the unintended consequences of all of this. The last meeting I was at in November, the auditorium was filled with white coats and scrubs, as I say, physicians, pharmacists, nurses, lab techs, grad techs. And these people all have choices. They have choices of where to work and where to go. Unfortunately, the signs and symptoms of their leaving are not really obvious. The first thing you might hear when people say, this is not what I signed up for, which is what people are saying. The first point might be Dr. Hoffberger's report when he talks about how many physicians have joined and how many left.
That was, if you can wrap it up.
I will. The second would be closing nursing units because we don't have nurses to staff them, because there are clinical shortages around the country, and that's what could happen here. So I hope to God it doesn't, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Thanks, next, Castellano, Barbara Long, followed by my friend John.
Thank you for your time. My name is Dick Panorama. I'm from Osceola County, but I visit Sarasota often since I was a child. I'm here as a Christian, concerned citizen to support many of my friends and neighbors. And I know this is not, for my fight, it's not particularly just with Sarasota Hospital. Like many of us, it's the protocols. We're really here to speak on the protocols throughout the country. My mom was here, she just stepped out, she was a nurse for 32 years, she ran ORs, she ran clinics, a lot of my family members. So growing up, I spent a lot of time in hospitals, so I'm really familiar. And this is probably one of the most beautiful hospitals I've seen. So you have a really nice facility, it sounds like you guys do a lot of good things. But a lot of good things is great, but there's still a lot of things that, when people fall through the cracks, when Cynthia and Sharon and many other people, and I hear their stories that have lost loved ones, those things, if we don't correct those problems and how we got there, we're devaluing life and we're normalizing that. And the next round gets worse and the next round gets worse. And my story started when my wife and I got COVID. We were actually visiting family in Sarasota. We had lunch and we went home and we got sick. And a few days later, I would end up in the ER really bad. Turned out I had COVID. I had accelerated heart rate, high fever, aches and chills. It took about 7 hours to see a physician in the ER. They were loaded up at that time with that second wave. A real nice physician came in and he told me with the pre-existing condition, you're going to go into crisis mode. There's nothing we can do for you until you go into crisis. And then we have a drug for you called remdesivir. So they gave me fluids. I walked to the car and I think in all my life with all my family, I've never had a physician tell me with all those symptoms that they couldn't even give me a CPAP. My mom in another state, same thing. She has pre-existing conditions, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, kidney disease. She got COVID, couldn't breathe, went to the hospital in Georgia. They told her there was nothing they could do for her until she went into crisis. But what we were fortunate for is I and then my mom a couple minutes later, we were able to get a hold of ivermectin, erythromycin, and prednisone. 2 days later, my wife and I felt great. Two hours later, I'm sorry, we were breathing better. 2 days later, we were fine. My mom was the same thing. After the protocol, she was great. She was unvaccinated. We're unvaccinated. And that led me down the rabbit hole to wonder, why was this not a protocol? Why wasn't this shared? And as I listened to testimony before the Senate, and I ended up speaking to so many doctors, it's amazing to me that even at this point, there's an argument. I heard people talking about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine don't work. The data supports something totally different. And with the vaccines, and as I've been speaking out publicly, I have a website called goofyvaccine.com where I document my experience. It's amazing that we're still having these conversations. And I think what most people want is just clarity, honesty. We want to heal. A lot of these people want to heal, and we just want to know that this isn't going to happen in the future. So I'm really appealing to all your hearts. And like And Chambers said, you know, unity. We really want to come together. We just want to make changes. Thank you.
Next is Barbara, followed by John Chappelle, followed by Olga, Hammond, sorry. Welcome back, Barbara.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Vaughn, and I live in Venice in Sarasota County. I was more than a little dismayed to see Chairman Hudson's news conference on TV and to read his recent editorials indicating that the hospital staff has been inundated with ugly, threatening phone calls, emails, etc. No one, certainly not our medical professionals, should have to put up with such a thing. But we all know that any controversy brings out the crazies on all sides. They get the headlines as time demonstrated. But I want to make very clear that those nasty communications are not coming from the people in this room. Of course, I can't vouch for every individual present at each of the recent board meetings, but I am comfortable vouching for most of the non-staff members here. That's because the rest of us here want one thing. We want the truth. That's why we're here. We want a report we can believe in. How many times do you have to hear that? It's not that difficult. We want SMH to submit to an impartial third-party audit, a report that we can believe in. If you remember, I asked you at the last meeting, if any of you were familiar with the Great Reset. Assuming that you probably are not, I suggested that you read up because you are an integral part of it. When the government directs how you provide medical care, what protocol you must follow, then reimburses you based on that care according to your obedience to their rules, and punishes any deviations, then you're no longer practicing medicine or providing health care. I doubt that your nursing staff and most of your doctors, I have no doubt that they are as unhappy as many of us with the protocols that were adhered to relentlessly in this hospital. But they dare not raise objections without putting their careers, their livelihoods in jeopardy. They've seen what's happened to some of their now former colleagues. Please, Sarasota Memorial Hospital,
Thank you, Ms. Dawn.
chief medical professionals, you studied and worked so long to learn your trade.
Ms. Dawn, thank you.
Remember your Hippocratic oath.
Thank you. Okay. It is John Capel, the audience. Welcome back, followed by Olga Hanlon, followed by Ryan Yordita.
Thank you.
John, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Tram, for your kind comments to me last time. I hope that in the future I can control the actions of SMH noble as well. However, that adjective is not appropriate at this time. And I do know, I don't know, but I'm assuming that most of the staff, doctors, they mean well, but the administration of the hospital has implemented protocols that harm people. And that's why we're here. We don't want to be here. I'd rather be at the beach, to be honest with you. SMH uses the PCR test, which never received the approval, government approval, and the settings were prefixed to get a positive outcome by setting the cycle threshold too high intentionally. Then you could say everyone has COVID, even though the COVID virus has never even been isolated in a lab. SMH continues to use protocols to kill people such as remdesivir and ventilators, both of which are known to kill at a high rate. The study published in the Lancet found no clinical benefit from the use of remdesivir. The U.S. government pays hospitals a 20% surcharge on the entire hospital bill if they use remdesivir on patients. But this hospital is interested in science or safe and effective medicines such as ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and vitamin C. Why? All of these medicines and supplements have been approved by the FDA for years. When the federal government is paying you to use protocols that kill people legally via the CARES and PrEP Act, what else can we do that we don't care? In California, lawsuits have been filed on behalf of at least 14 families against medical providers for prescribing them remdesivir without providing necessary information about it, leading to patients' death. Governor DeSantis is seriously considering taking away your immunity from civil and criminal prosecution in June of this year. The board supports a chief of staff who condemns those staff and patients who've done their own research and wisely decided not to take the clot shot, also known as a vaccine. He posted that those antibodies against COVID-19 must still be vaccinated. A peer-reviewed study from July 2022, published in the Journal of Clinical Infectious Disease, states that national immunity against COVID-19 offers better protection than vaccination. And just a few weeks ago, Florida Surgeon General Joe Ladapo wrote to the CDC and FDA asking them to explain why there's a 45 times increase in reports of life-threatening conditions after the COVID death shots were rolled out. Last week, Dr. Ladapo said, I'm not sure anyone should be taking the COVID vaccines. They have a terrible safety record. Dr. Ladapo got his medical degree at Harvard. Speaking of degrees, one of the hospital board members received a full college scholarship from vaccine pimp and mass murderer Bill Gates. Gates is neither a doctor nor a philanthropist. This is not a conflict of interest. Gates has also publicly stated that vaccines are good because they reduce population.
Thank you, Mr. Capel. Thank you. Next is Olga Hanlon, followed by Brian Randall, followed by Vicki Newswonder. I hope I got that right. Okay, Olga.
Yes, my name is Olga Hanlon, and I am a resident of Sarasota City.
Thank you.
I want you to know that nothing scares me more than to hear this hospital being told to use anecdotal evidence to treat pandemic. That is terrifying. I ask you, please continue to use peer-reviewed, scientifically based treatments in the future. This push to question and sow doubt about the protocols, quote unquote, is really making me question, what is this privatization about? What is the real intent here? Who wins if we privatize? Because it's not the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanlon. Next is Brian Randall, followed by Vicki Nusswonder, followed by Stephen Back. Going once for Brian Randall or Randall? Not seeing Brian, we'll move on to the next one. Here. That is Vicki Nusswander, followed by Stephen Fowler, followed by Stephen Canton or Canton. Is Vicki coming down? Okay, Vicki, welcome. You'll please state your name, so I got the name right and your residence.
Okay, I'm Vicki Nice-Wander, and I'm a Sarasota County resident.
Thank you.
And I've been here full-time since '06.
Thank you.
Okay. Quite a day today for all of you. Lots presented. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I want to thank SMH for their role in addressing the health and needs of our community. My experience as a patient as well is appreciated. I spent close to 30 years in public health in 2 states and in various fields due to my background. From environmental health, health education, substance abuse, to clinical and outreach during the early days of HIV. I wrote all the protocols where I was at. During the early days of HIV, where I was the first coordinator and supervisor of the Washington County, which is in Ann Arbor, Michigan area, HIV STD program and clinic, and chair of a regional planning group for over 10 years, working with the state and CDC addressing the HIV STD community needs. Communicable diseases are a different ballgame from the more isolated health issues. Here, I was pleased to see SMH step up to the plate with COVID as the state public health response became more and more politicized versus following the basic mission of public health, which is health promotion and disease prevention. I also have to say the data in the state really needs a lot of help and a lot of work, because that's really what our protocols, our standards of practice, et cetera, should be based on. And I hope to see that in the future. Thank you so much, SMH.
Thank you. It's wonderful. Thank you. Next is Stephen Bauer, followed by Stephen Cantoni or Cantone, followed by Alan Lenowitz. Welcome, Mr. Bauer.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Bauer. I'm a resident of Sarasota County.
Thank you.
First off, I want to congratulate the hospital on its most recent ranking. We certainly deserve the recognition. I want to also recognize the pain that I feel in this room. A lot of people have lost loved ones, and I came here expecting a different reception. I know that many of us disagree, but it's nice that we can at least have a civil conversation. I was disappointed to see so many police officers on duty here, metal detectors. Our institutions are under attack. And I'm disappointed to see the politicization of this hospital. And I know that so many speakers here aren't from Sarasota County, some from far, far away. It's political. Unlike many people in this room, through my work, I was here inside the hospital when the hospital was closed to the public. I saw the doctors, nurses, support staff risking their lives. I was terrified to be in the room. It was a dark, scary time. People want to take ivermectin. They don't want to take vaccines. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, misinformation. People are free to believe and do whatever they want. That's one of the things that we did in this country. I knew a Superior Court judge who liked to say, there's your freedom to swing your arms.
1 minute.
And at the tip of my nose. And I think that's very true. You are free to believe what you want. You are free not to be vaccinated. You're free to find someone who's willing to prescribe an alternate medication. You're free not to have any medical care at all. And I feel like this conversation is getting dangerously close to the tip of my nose. I want to be free to receive science-based, quality medical care. And again, back to politics and this effort to privatize the hospital. please, I ask the board members, don't let this happen. As far as, an investigation, that experience is great. I encourage an investigation, but I think, we know what the results would be.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Next is Stephen Cantone, followed by Alan Lenowitz, followed by Holly Duval. Duval, thank you.
My name is Steve Canton, I'm currently in Sarasota County. If you can't tell from my accent, I'm a refugee from New York. We've been governor, currently looking to reinstitute COVID case. Let me start by saying that I want you to call it conspiracy. That's your thing, that's fine. I want to applaud all the doctors in the back that have stood up and risked their job. It's very tough to be worried. I'm also here to speak about a personal level. Okay, I came in here for heart surgery not too long, recently, maybe 4 weeks ago, Dr. Hoffberger did the surgery. Like I said, he gets vaccinated and not vaccinated. I do not want a blood transfusion, blood that could be vaccinated. On the human end, in regards to the care, the cardiac floor, the nurses were fantastic. Dr. Caruso, my cardiologist, was fantastic. And Dr. Hoffberger, who has been under some bit of an attack, whether it's justified or not, I was going to say for COVID. Okay, I was in the police state in New York. The personal attacks don't really justify, because I found them to be very engaging and understanding of my political freedom and where I stood, because there was no way it was going to happen. And I was even dying to go and donate blood for me for that. Okay. The problem here is necessarily the doctors, the nurses, it's the bureaucrats and the people from the top. At no point in time, a little background, I'm retired in New York City. And these hospitals taking money from big corporations, Pfizer, whatever, it's like a copy of the drugs. It is a complete violation to your oath that you take. I can't say enough to Dr. Hoffberger and people who worked on my surgery. As far as conspiracy theories go, well, guess what? It's already been linked to myocarditis, and not too long ago, it was linked to blood clots. So were my concerns valid or not? That's up for everybody to decide on themselves. That being said, I was touched by your compassion to the woman behind me. It's okay to hold everybody accountable and have transparency. You want to put these people's concerns to rest and let them finish mourning their dead, then just have the third party. It is what it is. Give these people some closure and let them move on together. I'm so strong in my convictions and my beliefs against the New York Times, which loves to support conservatives, wanted to speak to me in regards. I couldn't be bothered because I saw the damage. You are, please, do the right thing. Dr. Hoffberger, thank you for the excellent work you did. Have a great afternoon.
David, thank you for your comment. I just have a question. So you had heart surgery here at Sarasota Memorial?
Yes, open heart surgery. I originally came in September for open heart surgery, where I had a couple of personal issues in my life started to unravel. The nurses were fantastic. The doctors were fantastic. He actually told me personally in regards to having a conversation about what do you do if you have people donate? What happens if you run out of blood? That's the kind of personal care that this hospital should have. It's the bureaucracy and the listen, man, I'm from New York. This whole COVID thing is like a shouting. It's so much money changing things you can't keep track.
So you did have heart surgery, and Dr. Hoffberger was your surgeon.
Literally 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, and can you confirm you were or not vaccinated?
I'm actually all glad to be.
And Dr. Hoffer operated on you, knowing full well that you were unvaccinated.
Yes, he did, honestly, yes, he did. On the personal aspect of the care, I have no complaints whatsoever.
I would just, thank you for sharing that with us. I would just say that there are statements by others that that's not the case, but I'm glad you confirmed that for us. And I appreciate you coming here today. You're all.
We were actually very, listen, I came in, even when in September, I came to the, around the party actually. I wasn't wearing a mask, wasn't getting the COVID test. Nobody was coming in with a shot. But they were great. You can't say that enough. That needs to trickle up.
I'm gonna thank you very much for sharing. Okay, may I have your attention? It's now 5 o'clock, and according to our orders of correction, it is now 5 o'clock. And in accordance with our orders today, we can adjourn at 5. We have 3 more speakers. I would recommend that we hear them and any discussion we would like to have. So the board is agreeable to extending that meeting. That'd be good. Next will be Alan Lenowitz, followed by Holly Duveau, followed by Michaela Matthew.
May I make a request? I have to leave at 5.
Who are you?
Holly DeVoe.
Hello, Holly.
And I was wondering if I could swap places for the next one.
Okay, Alan, do you mind? Hearing no objection, Holly, you have the floor.
You might regret it. No.
We want to hear everybody. Let's say in November, we hear everybody.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Holly Devote. It's like devoted. I was born in Minnesota, raised in Naples, Florida. And as soon as I had a daughter, I moved back to Minnesota to get a good education. Thank you. And now I'm back as a retiree.
And where do you live?
I live in Inglewood.
Inglewood. On the Sarasota County side?
Yes, good job. Good question.
Okay, that's good.
First of all, I'd like to confirm or clarify one of the statements someone made that 50% of the people who came to the hospital had COVID were turned away. And that's normal. You cannot, just because you have COVID, you don't necessarily need hospitalization. You keep hospitalization for those people who are truly sick and have breathing issues. I have 2 granddaughters who are in the medical field. One of them works primarily in the COVID floor, and she says that most of the people who are hospitalized have not been vaccinated. When I was raised, we all had to be vaccinated to go to school. I'm still alive, and I have not had COVID. My other family members have not been vaccinated. The whole family got sick. They've been sick 3 times now. People want to say you did a bad job during the height of the apex of the COVID issue. You guys were doing the very best you could. You were following the rules from the CDC. Who were doing all the tests, who were checking all the correct protocols. When you decide to go off protocol and go and use different medication, such as ivermectin, and your efficacy rate for the hospital could go down because they are not as good. They are not as proven. They have some use, yes. I have used ivermectin on my horses and on my dogs. Yes, it works even on fleas, on people and mice, but other than that, not so much. Your internal review took the work of 70 people and 850 hours. When did you say that that is a good review? All kinds of, every company does their review. They want to do what we call it a post-mortem review. What worked, what didn't work, and time expires. Yes.
Thank you for.
I support the public. Not the private.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Alan Littlewitz, followed by Michaela Matthew. Going once for Alan, going twice for Alan, and I don't believe Alan is still with us. Please mark them. And lastly, Michaela, welcome back. Going once for that Michaela, come down. Can't see that far, thank you. Ms. Matthew, welcome back.
You actually got my name.
I remember you sharing that with me last month.
So, thank you again for hearing us and holding space and extending the meeting.
And please state your name for the record and your.
Michaela Matthew, I live and reside in Sarasota County.
Perfect.
So people have liked to say that, this is a political issue. And if it really is a political issue, the members of this board that were on this board at the time were all Republican. I believe that that's the case today.
Yes.
So if that is indeed the case, if we keep wanting to say that this is a political issue, then why didn't the Republican board adopt what is considered to be the conspiracy theorist of doing hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin? So we can't have that argument both ways, okay? This hospital chose to not implement early treatment protocols, period, okay? And one of the questions that I have in their internal review that was done, is there any conflict of interest that the hospital engages in the contract that they signed to participate in the clinical trial for remdesivir? Does that hamstring the hospital to then participate? Did the efforts that this hospital participated in to bring that product to market under an EUA contribute to that? You see, Sarasota Memorial has taken down off of their clinical trials site on the website. They've removed remdesivir. It's not there any longer because it's no longer popular, because it's under so much attack. You don't want people to know that you actually did participate, but you did. You were the 43rd hospital that participated in that trial, and you were proud. You went on the media and talked about it. We held a Zoom on April 9th, 2020. The first doctor that I heard treating somebody for COVID was an editor for orthomolecular medicine, Robert Chang. He was in China visiting his parents for Chinese New Year. He used nothing but nutraceuticals to treat people in China for COVID, and none of them died. And that information was silenced and censored. In fact, the pulmonologist in this hospital went on the record in the newspaper to talk about how vitamin D, which has now been shown to be proven how effective it is to test to make sure that we have people with high doses, high levels of active vitamin D. But we told the public in this community that you serve that vitamin C and vitamin D have no use. That is criminal. That's criminal. We want an open, transparent investigation, and it needs to include your participation in the remdesivir clinical trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before the board? Not hearing anyone, we'll close the quick comments. And is there one more? Have you filled out a yellow sheet?
I already did, I already spoke, I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify because there's some people talking about non-residents coming here for some nefarious reasons.
Refresh your name.
My name is Gail McCray, I'm the nurse that left California, I left a year and a half ago, I've been here for the last year and a half. So, you know, it's tough to hear people trying to accuse people who come up here to speak of having nefarious intents. That I am living here in Florida. I don't have a residence here. I've been here and I know most of the other people. I sleep in an RV. I escaped California. I left with my family. Just because I don't have a full address here, I've been here for the last year and a half. Well,
It's just
these
more-
public here.
Mr. Frank, thank you for clarifying that. The reason I asked for the residents is we would like to be able to evaluate the comments that we hear. Please, when we hear from you, we'd like to know what references come. It's pretty harmless. So, anybody else? Public comments are closed. It's now open back to the board. If there are any comments from the board, before I would make a few comments. Been a long day, I know. Very well. I have some observations, if I can, speaking for myself. I think it's pretty clear in listening to some of the comments, there are issues that can be controlled at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and there are issues that are out of our control. And I would like to just say to the public that's here and those that may be listening, is that we're very focused on trying to deliver health care here in Sarasota. We can't control stuff that happens beyond our control, and we're doing the best that we can. As it relates to the conversation about ivermectin and different drugs and off-label, I've learned a lot about this over the last 4 or 5 months. Dr. Weinstein has shared lots of stuff with me I've learned about. And I will tell you, if you read our report, there were 151 prescriptions of ivermectin that was filled in this hospital. The hospital does not write prescriptions. Doctors, attending physicians write prescriptions, and we filled over 151 prescriptions for ivermectin during the 3-year period, and that involves 41 patients. The next thing I'd like to just make an observation. Yes, Brad.
I was just gonna. I was just gonna add one thing too. Conversation I had. If a physician prescribes ivermectin, there's no paperwork, there's no process. The physician rules, and he prescribes it, it's charted, and it's. There's no hospital intervention.
They placed the order.
Yeah, they place the order on there. So that's important because I wanted to make sure the hospital wasn't blocking.
They were. Please, public comment is closed. If you want to talk about it after the meeting, we're glad to meet with you. So, please.
Speak out loud.
Order, please. Second observation I'd like to make, because I've heard it alleged, is that there was financial windfall to the hospital. If you look very closely at our financial statements, you'll see that we spend an incredible amount of money on COVID treatments. Look at our financial statements. And the final thing I'd say, I put this in the op-ed I wrote last week for the various publications. We all have the same interest. We want to do what is best for the health care of our citizens in Sarasota County. We may not all agree on the protocols for how we do it, but I
think that as responsible adults, we can have these dialogues, these discussions, but I think that at the end of the day, we all have the same objective. And that is to deliver the best health care we can for our citizens in Sarasota County. Is there any other business to come before the board?
Chairman, I'd like to add on to that. Building off of your comment about what is within the purview of the board and what is not. There are plenty of fine points that have been made today. They are just not within our jurisdiction. It is not our responsibility to sit in judgment of all things COVID, only the behaviors and the policies that occur at this hospital. An analogy to consider is the security of citizens. Think about your county commission. You don't go to your county commission and ask them to review federal defense policies and weapon systems. The only thing that is in their purview is to fund the local police department. And they do what they can do locally. You go to your congressman and ask him or her to advocate for your views on how best to secure the safety of our citizens across the country. The same is true here. As it concerns the vaccine, I will repeat, I was the first board member and am a member of a board that in no way wanted to ever mandate the vaccine for any of our staff members. We believed in the staff's medical freedom. Medical freedom also pertains to doctors, and doctors must feel comfortable in the medicine that they practice too. I also am very thankful for the person who called for increased civility in our conversations and exchanges and viewpoints, both in and outside of this room, because I am not alone in having received many threatening phone calls threatening to destroy me, and multiple groups that are present today who have unsuccessfully attempted to bully me online with sexist comments. So as we continue in the noble effort to make good come from these last 3 very hard years, let's all act in a way that would make our children proud. Thank you.
Is there any other comment from any other board members? Mr. Ruby.
I just want to reiterate what we said, I think last time on the floor. There were a lot of people here today who mentioned privatization of the hospital. No members of this board want this hospital privatized. I don't know how that thing started, but it's just total plumbing. So it's just put your mind at ease. This hospital is not going to be privatized.
I say finally, just to close it out, we may not always agree, but at least we can sit down and have reasonable conversations on reasonable minutes. Thank y'all for being here. You're always welcome to come back. We appreciate y'all taking the time. This meeting is adjourned.